Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. One task per week, starting from the Goddess of Flash Marriage. Chapter 61. Lu Sheng scolded Liang Chu in his heart and quickly put some crispy powder into his inventory. After asking Lu Sheng if there was anything he needed to carry with him, the security personnel at the ceiling table took out a piece of tape and wrapped it around Lu Sheng's wrist. At this time, Lu Sheng saw that his prop column and equipment column immediately turned gray. It is no longer possible to store items inside, nor to remove items from it. The second level of manual inspection mainly screens suspicious persons and carried items. Lu Sheng had nothing left on him, so he quickly passed the security check on the second level. We are about to reach the security check on the third floor. Since metal replica balls are expensive, not everyone will accept the third level of security inspection. The soldiers of the Tianhe guards will randomly select some people from the crowd for inspection. These people who are drawn need to hold the metal copy ball with one hand. It only takes about 10 seconds. The 8 sides of the metal copy ball will successively copy the characters in the props and equipment columns of these characters. Thing. In the Sky City, weapons such as laser guns and laser knives are allowed to be carried. Therefore, if you only have these items in your props and equipment inventory, you can pass. But if some weapons of mass destruction appear in your 2 columns, you will be immediately detained for investigation. Items such as some incense will undoubtedly be taken away. In Lu Sheng's inventory right now, there is the bottle of Sushong powder. And because of the seal on the wrist, even if he wanted to take it out from the item inventory and throw it away secretly, he couldn't. So now, it seems that he can only rely on luck. But Lu Sheng has never believed in luck. Both Uncle Tong and Liang Chu successfully passed the third level of security inspection without being randomly inspected. Lu Sheng was about to walk towards the 2 of them when he saw a guard soldier walking towards him from a distance. Just say that I don't believe in luck. Lu Sheng quickly raised his head and looked at the crowd around him. The title above each person's head slowly emerged under Lu Sheng's gaze. A richly dressed young man from an aristocratic family. An eye-catching white beauty. Lu Sheng didn't know what he was looking for. He only knew that the guard soldier was getting closer and closer to him. Li Mulong was looking at himself with squinted eyes. Uncle Tong and Liang Chu held their breath nervously. Suddenly Lu Sheng saw a title in the crowd. An inconspicuous young master. Lu Sheng hurriedly clicked on the inconspicuous title details. Title entry. Inconspicuous. Attribute details. It will be inexplicably ignored in the crowd. Attention -50%. Whether to copy this title will cost 10 points. Lu Sheng was overjoyed and hurriedly spent 10 points to copy the title. Then quickly replaced it on his own head. An inconspicuous fat man. The moment Lu Sheng finished replacing the title, the guard soldier passed by him, pointed at a young man behind him and said, "Come here for a random inspection." Lu Sheng, Uncle Tong and Liang Chu all breathed a sigh of relief silently. Seeing that the 3 of them had successfully passed the security check, Li Mulong raised his voice and said, "Okay, I've brought you all in. Then go to the banquet hall by yourself. Remember not to get me into trouble." After saying that, he walked away without even looking at the people. Lu Sheng pulled Liang Chu over and shouted in a low voice, "What did you mean just now? Did you want to kill me?" Liang Chu shook off Lu Sheng's hand as if nothing had happened. "Aren't you fine?" Uncle Tong made a gun-like gesture and put it on Liang Chu's back. "How about Xiao Lu? Have you checked his identity? If he is an undercover agent, I will find an opportunity to kill him." Lu Sheng weighed it in his mind. Once he rashly says that Liang Chu is an undercover agent, Liang Chu will definitely know that his identity as a prophet is false. At that time, it will inevitably take a lot of talking, and it will easily arouse the suspicion of Uncle Tong and Chu Chengge. Lu Sheng doesn't want to take this risk yet. So he deliberately said, "It doesn't matter whether he is or not now. As long as he can complete the task of spreading poison without causing any complications, what will happen even if he is an undercover agent? Uncle Tong, lie down on the beam for a while and keep an eye on him to make sure he doesn't do anything wrong. That'll be it. Compared with who is the undercover, what is more important now is how to get some incense out of my item inventory." Uncle Tong now has great trust in Lu Sheng. Although he did not fully understand the logic of Lu Sheng's words, he still nodded. I know how to get some crispy fragrance out. Liang Chu was shocked by Uncle Tong's words. It comes from the Research Association's database. Naturally, we know how buggy this sealed bracelet is. The Research Association spent several years and invested hundreds of millions of manpower and material resources in trying to crack it, but all failed. How could this Uncle Tong find a way to crack it? Liang Chu asked in disbelief. Can you take out items from the sealed item slot? Uncle Tong chuckled. Actually, it's not that complicated. This sealing bracelet will only trigger an alarm if it is torn off within the City Lord's palace. All we have to do is crawl outside the City Lord's palace and tear it off. As he spoke, he raised his head and pointed at the top of his head. The banquet hall of Pantao Banquet is the Sihai Hall on the top floor of the main building. When I just looked at the cross-section, I took a special look. On the edge of the beam, there is a decorative chimney that leads to the roof. We just need to crawl out from there, tear off the seal outside the City Lord's palace, take out some incense, and then crawl back out. Lu Sheng and Liang Chu couldn't help but look at each other. It turns out that the most brilliant cracking method is so simple and unpretentious. But I have to admit that this method is effective. It took Lu Sheng and the others nearly 15 minutes to take the elevator to the 80th floor, the top floor of the City Lord's mansion. As soon as I got off the elevator, I was stunned by the sight in front of me. More than 1,000 graceful and stunning women surrounded the entire waiting area outside Sihai Hall, queuing up to board the hanging ladder. Whenever I see a guest coming up, I will neatly turn my head and smile at the guest. The exquisite makeup and charming expression scared Lu Sheng and the three of them to quickly lower their heads. I was afraid that it would explode on the spot accidentally. Uncle Tong signaled the three of them to separate and sneak up the hanging ladder quietly when no one was paying attention. With the title of an inconspicuous fat man on his head, Lu Sheng climbed up the hanging ladder easily. Uncle Tong was also very agile and didn't attract anyone's attention when he jumped up the ladder. Only Liang Chu, due to his outstanding appearance and not so agile skills, found it extremely difficult to climb up the hanging ladder quietly. Fortunately, there was a temporary rehearsal near 7:30, which attracted everyone's attention. Liang Chu finally found the opportunity and climbed up. The three of them reached the end of the hanging ladder and found that they were still about 2 meters away from the beam. At this time, the hanging ladder is nearly 10 meters high from below. Just looking down makes one's hands and feet weak. Uncle Tong signaled Lu Sheng and the two to get out of the way, then backed away 10 meters, and then ran forward at full speed. When he reached the end of the hanging ladder, he suddenly kicked his legs forward. With the help of inertia, Uncle Tong flew up from the hanging ladder. It drew a beautiful arc in the air and accurately hooked the beam. Uncle Tong used his hands and feet to turn over and climb onto the beam. Lu Sheng and Liang Chu both took a breath of cold air, feeling frightened in their hearts. This is a bit too thrilling. However, what made the two of them even more desperate was that Uncle Tong waved to the two of them from the opposite beam, signaling them to jump over quickly. Lu Sheng is not confident in himself, but in his body. A weight of 180 kilograms has to fly across a distance of 2 meters and land on the opposite beam. No matter how much Lu Sheng thought about it, it was not something he could do. But when I thought that it would cost up to 30 ladder points to change the title of agility, I suddenly felt that it was not impossible to give it a try. At this time, Uncle Tong stood on the opposite beam and urged the two of them. Lu Sheng gritted his teeth and stepped back 10 meters. Ding dang dang. Lu Sheng sped forward with heavy steps. When he was nearing the end of the hanging ladder, he also imitated Uncle Tong and kicked his legs forward hard. The heavy body drew a lovely arc in the air and then stopped abruptly. With 1 meter left between the 2 meters, Lu Sheng felt his body begin to fall. Lu Sheng couldn't help but think sadly in his heart. Before the fairy dispersed the flowers, she first made everyone's blood boil. It was also a surprise for the organizers. Just when Lu Sheng's body was about to fall, a pair of hands suddenly grabbed him firmly. Uncle Tong's feet were hooked on the beam, and most of his body was hanging in the air. The look on his face was ferocious, and veins popped out on his hands. Holding his breath, he didn't dare to say a word. He pulled Lu Sheng up with a blushing face. Uncle Tong and Lu Sheng were both spread out on the beam, breathing heavily. Uncle Tong glanced at Lu Sheng, feeling frightened. I asked you to jump over just now, but I was careless. Lu Sheng was also afraid. In the future, you will still have to spend these points. If your life is gone, there is no use keeping so many points. Liang Chu's face turned blue with fright at this time. He stood tremblingly on the spot and said nervously, "Why don't I jump over here?" Uncle Tong's expression immediately changed. "No, others don't have to come over, you have to come over. I don't feel relieved if you're not with us." The corners of Liang Chu's eyes twitched. He glanced at the banquet hall below and suddenly felt dizzy. Perhaps because of the reputation of the young master of his research society, he finally gritted his teeth and rushed towards the crossbar. Fortunately, Liang Chu still had some foundation. With the help of Uncle Tong and Lu Sheng, he managed to climb up. Uncle Tong pointed to an air outlet at the end of the beam and said, "That's the decorative chimney," and we climbed out from there. The chimney pipe was very narrow and there was no escalator. Uncle Tong gestured with his arm and said, "You can imitate my movements and climb up in a moment." After saying that, Uncle Tong jumped up, then leaned against one side of the pipe and placed his feet on the other side. Relying on the friction of the body, climb up step by step. Liang Chu couldn't help but curse. Did this guy break out of prison? But Lu Sheng got into the chimney first. Lu Sheng fell last, with some hesitation in his heart. He is obviously an undercover agent, why are he working so hard? But thinking that his personal mission had not yet been completed, he had no choice but to grit his teeth and follow. Lu Sheng climbed up about 3 meters in the chimney when he heard Uncle Tong's voice coming from the top of the chimney. "There is a lid here. You two wait while I open the lid." Then a burst of sand and dust fell. Lu Sheng sighed twice, and finally felt a cold wind blowing in from above his head. "Okay, we can go out." Lu Sheng and the others finally climbed out of the chimney and reached the roof of the city lord's mansion after going through many difficulties and dangers. At this time, the moon was in front of them and the stars were around them, but they did not feel a trace of romance. Trust me, romance only happens on rooftops below the second floor. When you stand on the roof of the 80th floor and feel the cross wind blowing from all directions, you just want to live well. Uncle Tong braved the strong wind and shouted to Lu Sheng and the others. "It should be fine now, let's tear off the sealing bracelet on our hands." Lu Sheng and Liang Chu hesitated and did not dare to take action. Uncle Tong sighed. "In this case, I'll go first." After saying that, he pulled the tape wristband hard. "I have to say that the quality of this bracelet is really good." Uncle Tong pulled it hard 7 or 8 times before finally taking it off. However, the alarm was not triggered during the whole process. It seemed that climbing to the roof was indeed leaving the scope of the city lord's mansion. Lu Sheng and Liang Chu also tore off their bracelets. The seals on the item inventory and equipment inventory were immediately lifted. Uncle Tong gestured towards the bottom of the chimney. "Let's crawl back first." Lu Sheng and Liang Chu nodded quickly, eager to leave this dangerous place as soon as possible. 3 minutes later, the 3 of them returned to the crossbar safely. Uncle Tong took out his sniper rifle from the equipment rack, and Lu Sheng divided the powder for incense burning into 2 parts, and gave 1 part to Liang Chu. Uncle Tong patted Lu Sheng on the shoulder. "Time is running out, hurry up and spread some fragrance, I won't go down anymore." After speaking, he turned to look at Liang Chu. "I will keep an eye on you and don't try to cause any trouble." Liang Chu snorted in dissatisfaction, but did not argue much and jumped off the beam with Lu Sheng. The 2 of them carefully returned to the ground. Liang Chu pointed to the waiting area on the west side and said, "I'll go to the west, you go to the east, be careful to hold your breath and don't get stunned." After finishing speaking, without waiting for Lu Sheng's reply, he walked to the waiting area to the west. Lu Sheng raised his head and glanced at the beam above his head, thought about it, and walked to the east area. He held some fragrant powder in the palm of his hand and pretended to be a guest, deliberately passing by the group of beautiful ladies. Gently rub it with your fingers, and the crispy fragrance is sprinkled bit by bit into the girl's skirts. At 7:49, the powder in the bottle has almost been sprinkled. At this time, Chu Chenggi's voice came from the wireless communicator behind his ear. "We have just entered Sihaitang. How is the situation over there?" Uncle Tong quickly replied, "I'm already in position and can see Sun Qishan's position." Lu Sheng also replied, "I have successfully finished placing all the crispy incense here." Chu Chengge said, Where is Liang Chu? How could I have a problem? It has been cured a long time ago. Okay, let's find a place to meet first. We just saw the last clue treasure box in the safe passage. Liang Chu, who was very cold and arrogant just now, suddenly became excited. I'll be right over, help me keep an eye on the treasure chest. The moment he heard Chu Chengge say he had found the treasure chest, Lu Sheng suddenly became very nervous. Once the treasure chest is opened, the identity of himself and the mysterious woman will be exposed. There is no doubt that he will definitely bear the thunderous wrath from Chu Chengge and others. Lu Sheng felt frightened when he thought of Uncle Tong lying down on the beam. He had to think of a way to prevent Chu Chengge from opening the treasure chest. Lu Sheng rushed to the safe passage and began to check his prop column, equipment column and title column. Hope I can find something useful. Suddenly, he stared at the first title in the title column and fell into deep thought. Alarm if you enter wrong password. This was the title he copied when he was doing the task of delivering tips to Jin Taebai, and it was also the first title he copied. At that time, he felt that this title could be of great use, so he kept it. Maybe this time, it's time for him to really come in handy. Lu Sheng clicked on the attribute details. Title entry. If you enter the wrong password, call the police. Attribute details. Once you enter the wrong password, 7758, the wireless alarm function will be triggered and you will be punished by permanent assassination by the subordinates. Lu Sheng had an idea in his mind. If I replace the original title of the treasure chest with this title, does it mean that Liang Chu will also face such a punishment challenge? At 7:55, the peach feast is about to begin. Lu Sheng, Liang Chu, Chu Chengge and the mysterious woman met in the safe passage. Yang Yuyan still looked cold, standing alone in the corner of the safe passage. Lu Sheng glanced at her intentionally or unintentionally. Although she still looked very calm, Lu Sheng guessed that she must also be very nervous at the moment. This has nothing to do with the level of a woman's ability. It's purely an instinctive reaction before being exposed as an undercover agent. The clue box was lying quietly on the stairs. Lu Sheng can see the title on the treasure chest. A treasure chest hiding the name of an undercover agent. There really wasn't any room left. There is still a combination lock on the treasure chest. Liang Chu confidently came to the treasure box and took a deep breath. Who is the undercover? The truth will be revealed soon. You will know soon whether I am lying or not. Chu Chengge stood next to Liang Chu, staring at his hands closely to prevent him from cheating. Yang Yu secretly made a fighting stance and quietly moved half of his body to the safety door. Uncle Tong's voice appeared in the wireless communicator. Please read the clues that will be revealed later. Lu Sheng glanced at the title on the password lock. A lock that only treasure chest hunters can open. With a sudden thought, I changed the title to Alarm if you enter wrong password. Now the title on the password lock has become a lock that will alarm if the wrong password is entered. Liang Chu stood there and thought for a moment, and finally stretched out his hand to press the combination lock. Before opening it, he turned his head and glanced at Lu Sheng and the others, deliberately pretending to be mysterious and said, "When the name of the undercover agent comes out soon, you will definitely be surprised." Chu Chengge urged impatiently, "Stop talking nonsense and hurry up and open the treasure chest." Liang Chu chuckled and began to fiddle with the password. Everyone held their breath nervously. Lu Sheng is no exception. Because he is now a little unsure whether Liang Chu's special ability can see the replaced password. It wasn't until Liang Chu's first number was dialed to one that Lu Sheng breathed a sigh of relief. Liang Chu entered the password 1147 with determination, and then pressed the unlock button. At this time, the combination lock made a violent vibration, but the lock did not open. Chu Chengge frowned, looked at Liang Chu and asked, "What's going on? Why isn't the lock unlocked?" Cold sweat dripped down Liang Chu's forehead. With a shocked look on his face, he pressed the unlock button repeatedly. "There's no reason why it can't be opened. This is the unlocking code you gave me." Uncle Tong sneered in the communicator. "HMPH, I deliberately pretended that I couldn't open it. It seems that the undercover agent probably ran away." Yang Yuyan's eyes were full of doubts. She was ready to take action just now, but she didn't expect that there would be a dramatic reversal. Lu Sheng's concern at this time is different from everyone else's. He even wanted to know whether the vibration on the password lock just now was the wireless alarm function. If so, how should the second half of the sentence, being punished by permanent assassination by subordinates, be realized? After all, this is the city lord's mansion, how could the servants sneak in? At this moment, there was a sudden rush of footsteps in the staircase corridor. Immediately afterwards, a Tianhe guardsman hurriedly ran up. At a glance, he saw Liang Chu squatting on the ground and unlocking the door. Without saying a word, he pulled out the laser gun and pointed it at his head. A laser beam flew past his scalp. Liang Chu was so frightened that he instinctively ducked and hid behind Chu Chang'e. The soldiers of the Tianhe guards immediately stretched out their hands to pull Chu Chang'e away. Upon seeing this, Liang Chu quickly pushed Chu Chang'e forward from behind, and he rushed out of the safety door using his hands and feet. The soldiers of the Tianhe guards immediately knocked Chu Chang'e away and chased after Liang Chu's back. From beginning to end, none of the three Lu Sheng seemed interested. Lu Sheng now seems to understand a little bit why the ancestor of the subordinate said that no matter where he hid, he could not escape the pursuit of the subordinate. It turns out that even in the Tianhe guards, there are actually people who are subordinates. This made him have to look at that ancestor with admiration. Chu Chang'e's identity is the best teammate, and he needs to ensure the number of players in the final copy. So almost as soon as the Guardians of the Galaxy ran out, he immediately chased after him. Yang Yuyan did not stop, and was about to turn around and leave, when Lu Sheng suddenly grabbed her wrist from behind. Yang Yuyan was shocked. She turned over and pushed Lu Sheng to the ground. Lu Sheng quickly begged for mercy. "Don't do anything. We are one of our own. I am also an undercover agent." Yang Yuyan looked dubiously at Lu Sheng, who was grinning in pain, and relaxed a little. Lu Sheng took a breath and said, "You should know that I didn't lie. I am not a prophet. My identity is the Wolf of the Night. You are not a mass murderer, your identity is an informer. Now that it's down to the wire, there's no need for us to hide our identities from each other anymore." Although Yang Yuyan still had many doubts in her heart, she still let go. Lu Sheng shook his sore arm, looked at Yang Yuyan and said, "I have no other intention of stopping you. I just want to tell you how to crack the Sushong. You only need to cut 3 fingers of the soul-leaving person to pull him out of the soul-leaving syndrome." As Lu Sheng spoke, he gestured on his fingertips, then took out a laser pistol from the equipment slot and handed it over. "My equipment slot has been unlocked. If you hide this on your body, you might be able to use it." Yang Yuyan took the laser pistol hesitantly, nodded to Lu Sheng, then quickly turned around and left the stairwell. Lu Sheng's voice came from behind. "I wish you a successful undercover mission." Yang Yuyan's whole body was shocked, and she suddenly felt a strange feeling in her heart. She waved to Lu Sheng behind her back to express her gratitude. Lu Sheng looked at the graceful back of the mysterious woman and felt something in his heart. "Although it's a pity that I can't see my face, but just looking at this back, I think the national goddess is nothing more than this." After the mysterious woman walked away, Lu Sheng returned to the treasure chest. The treasure chest contains his and the mysterious woman's names. If he doesn't take it out, it will always make him feel uneasy. Lu Sheng then squatted down and entered the password 7758 on the password lock. Sure enough, the treasure chest popped open. A stack of square notes lay in the middle of the treasure chest. Lu Sheng reached out and took out the note and unfolded it in his hand. Sure enough, the names of 2 people were written on it. Lu Sheng, Yang Yuyan. Lu Sheng was shocked and quickly stood up and looked in the direction where the mysterious woman left. However, there is no beauty in sight. But this beauty turned out to be Yang Yuyan. Lu Sheng was stunned for a moment until a new message suddenly popped up in the message bar. Personal mission update. Congratulations on successfully eliminating a non-undercover player in this round and successfully completing all personal missions. 3/3. Rewards for completing personal tasks will be settled after the dungeon is cleared. Lu Sheng was suddenly confused. My personal mission was actually completed. At the same time, Chu Chang'e's irritable voice came from Lu Sheng's wireless communicator. Liang Chu was suddenly eliminated. Lu Sheng suddenly realized. It must have been because he had just opened the clue treasure box that Liang Chu was unable to complete his personal task of opening 3 treasure boxes. As a result, he was judged to have failed his personal mission and was eliminated from the competition. Therefore, he completed his personal mission by mistake. Uncle Tong asked hurriedly. Eliminated, have you found out the clues? Chu Chang'e said frustrated. No, Chu Chang'e couldn't open the code lock, and then the soldiers of the Tianhe Guard suddenly appeared and started chasing Liang Chu for some reason. Then just now, Liang Chu disappeared in front of my eyes without any warning. Lu Sheng asked, pretending to be surprised. Why did he disappear suddenly? Chu Chang'e sighed bitterly. Perhaps the personal mission failed. You must ensure that you complete the personal mission. If you continue to be eliminated, I will be gone too. Lu Sheng quickly gave a few hypocritical words of comfort, and then heard Uncle Tong say. The peach feast has begun. Suddenly the lights in Sihai Hall brightened, and then, a short middle-aged man walked onto the stage with a big smile. With his appearance, the venue burst into applause. Huang Shengtian smiled and waved to everyone. It's the annual peach feast again. The city in the sky has become more and more prosperous this year, which is inseparable from the hard work of everyone here. Therefore, this peach feast is just a banquet to thank everyone. Of course, this year's peach banquet is not only a banquet of thanks, but also a banquet of peace. We also specially invited Sun Qishan, the leader of the guilty people, to attend the banquet. We hope that from now on, war will cease in heaven and on earth, and peace will last forever. Quote. Let us welcome Sun Qishan with warm applause. In the Sihai Hall, there was sparse applause. The spotlight suddenly hit the door, and Sun Qishan, who was short and thin, walked swaggering into the Sihai Hall, accompanied by the Rakshasa girl and others. Many of the guests present were soldiers who had fought against him head-on and returned in defeat. Their eyes were full of hatred when they looked at Sun Qishan. Sun Qishan didn't care. He looked at no one with a cold face and walked straight to the main table in front of the performance stage. When he was about to walk to the main table, he nodded to Huang Shengtian on the performance stage as a greeting. Huang Shengtian smiled in return, and then rambled on about his views on peace. I kept reading until 8:15, and finally announced. The peach feast begins now. There was a wave of applause in the Sihai Hall. Immediately afterwards, the host's voice, as bright as a bell, came from mid-air. Thanks to the city lord for his speech, now we will bring you the long-awaited peach presentation session by the goddess. I invite a fairy to come down to earth and give you a gift of fairy peaches. Chu Chang'e hurriedly warned. Everyone, please stay away to avoid being poisoned by Sushong. Lu Sheng then withdrew from Sihaitang. At this time, 1001 stunning women have climbed up the hanging ladders on both sides holding peaches in their hands. They used special skirts to jump down from the hanging ladder. In mid-air, her skirts were flying, really like a fairy descending to earth. Chu Chang'e reminded again. I don't know how long it will take for the incense to take effect. Everyone should be prepared at any time. Of course Lu Sheng would not make any preparations. He had just told Yang Yuyan how to crack Dian Sushong. In addition to helping her complete the undercover mission, he also hoped that she would wake up Sun Qishan and others for him. Once they are awakened, Chu Chang'e and Tong Shu alone will obviously not be able to complete the assassination mission. At that time, you can reap the benefits and wait for the task to be completed easily. In the Sihai Hall, nearly 1,000 guests did not notice anything strange at all. They all watched the girls dancing around them with fascination. The peach-picking dance lasted for about 15 minutes, and the guests who watched the dance became more and more enchanted. Many guests even started dancing to the music. Uncle Tong asked doubtfully. Is this the beginning of the fragrance? Chu Chang'e glanced at Sun Qishan and Huang Shengtian who were still chatting and laughing from a distance, and said cautiously. We'll wait. After nearly 10 minutes, the behavior of the guests in the entire Sihai Hall began to become even more bizarre. Some people began to speak, and some began to fight with their hands. Some elders stood on chairs and gave pointers, while some children were lying on the dining table, crying and doing homework in the air. As for Sun Qishan and Huang Shengtian, one gestured with his hands like firing a gun, and the other actually started singing loudly with chopsticks. A group of security guards looked dumbfounded outside the door, but they did not dare to rush in. What happened to these people inside? A young guard who participated in the security mission of the peach banquet for the first time could not help but sigh in his heart. The things rich people play are really interesting. Chu Chang'e shouted in his earphones. It's almost time, let's go. Suddenly, Yang Yuyan was seen rushing into Sihaitang and heading straight for Sun Qixin. Chu Changge was startled and quickly followed her. Yang Yuyan quickly approached Sun Qixin like a gust of wind, and when she was about to come to him and wake him up, an unexpected scene suddenly happened. Sun Qixin suddenly jumped up from his seat, looked around at the crazy crowd, and shouted. It's a bit sweet. The superiors actually set a trap to frame us. Brothers fought with them. As soon as he finished speaking, the civilian security guards immediately brought down the Tianhe guards soldiers around them and began to tear off the sealing bracelet on his hand. At this time, Yang Yuyan and Chu Changge, who were halfway there, were dumbfounded. I couldn't figure out what was going on for a while. Why didn't Sun Qixin get poisoned by Sushong? Could it be that he had woken up from the soul-leaving syndrome? It was Chu Changge who came to his senses first and hurriedly shouted into the communicator. Uncle Tong, hurry up and snipe Sun Qixin. Yang Yuyan was shocked. Once Uncle Tong shot Sun Qixin, her personal mission would fail. She quickly took out the laser pistol Lu Sheng handed her from her arms, pointed it in the direction of the beam and fired. Uncle Tong, who was lying on the beam, was caught off guard and instinctively retracted his head. The personal guards beside Sun Qixin also immediately realized that there was an ambush above their heads, and quickly protected Sun Qixin behind them. Yang Yuyan fired randomly at the beam where Uncle Tong was, and then retreated toward the door while firing. Chu Changge suddenly woke up. It turns out you are the undercover. Yang Yuyan's personal mission has been completed and she does not want to waste words with Chu Changge. After confirming that the security guards around Sun Qixin had torn off their bracelets and taken out their weapons, they quickly turned around and got into the crowd. Chu Changge was furious at this moment. He seemed to suddenly think of something and cursed into the communicator. Xiao Lu, you are not a prophet, and you are also an undercover agent. Lu Sheng silently took the wireless communicator from his ear, threw it under his feet, and crushed it to pieces. At this time, the fairies who were suffering from soul-leaving syndrome were still immersed in memories and dancing. Lu Sheng and Yang Yuyan used the girls' bodies as cover and quickly ran into the safe passage, planning to escape downstairs. What happened just now was too sudden, and no one knew what else would happen tonight. It's important to escape and save your life. However, when the two of them ran down more than 2 floors, they heard the sound of large troops running from the stairs. Li Jinlong, who was in charge of security tonight, led a large number of Tianhe Guard soldiers and came after hearing the news. Lu Sheng quickly grabbed Yang Yuyan, and the two had no choice but to retreat to the rooftop of the city lord's mansion. A flood of escort soldiers instantly poured into the Sihai Hall. With their obvious numerical advantage, they quickly forced the criminals back to a corner of the Sihai Hall. Lu Sheng and Yang Yuyan hid behind the crowd, keeping vigilant eyes on the convoy soldiers, but also on guard against the revenge of Chu Changge and Uncle Tong. Li Jinlong, who was fully armed, looked at Sun Qixin and shouted loudly. Sinner Sun Qixin, you have been surrounded, put down your weapons quickly and be captured without a fight. Sun Qixin snorted coldly, raised a laser gun and pointed it at the back of Huang Shengtian's head, who was still singing. You want to negotiate peace under the guise of a peach banquet, but at the same time you want to assassinate me. What a good strategy and means. In this case, I will always make you pay some price. If you dare to take another step forward, I will kill him first. Li Jinlong didn't dare to step forward. He looked around the field and found that his father Li Jin was playing military chess and his mother was applying a facial mask. The younger brother Li Lianhua was practicing boxing in the air. The most embarrassing thing was that his second brother, Li Mulong, acted like he was sucking milk and said dirty words in his mouth. Is it some crispy incense? Li Jinlong muttered to himself, and then shouted to Sun Qixin. Sun Qixin, there must be a misunderstanding here. Let the city lord go first. I will definitely find out the truth and give you an explanation. Misunderstand? Sun Qixin raised his head and laughed. Do you think we are fools? I just said that since you are planning to harm me, you have to pay some price. As soon as Sun Qixin finished speaking, the air defense siren suddenly sounded. What happened? Li Jinlong turned to look at the adjutant beside him, and the adjutant quickly replied. Report from below, a group of criminals have invaded the city lord's mansion. How many people? 30 or 40 people. How could 30 or 40 people trigger the air raid siren? They said there are more than 10 mutant beasts. Before the adjutant finished speaking, he saw a huge moth swooping over from the window. A big hole was immediately broken into the 80-story city lord's mansion, and a manic cold wind instantly poured in from the window. The tables and chairs in Sihai Hall were in chaos, and guests and peaches were everywhere. Li Jinlong quickly ordered the soldiers to shoot at the moths together. But the fluttering moth had no intention of stopping. He kept flapping his wings, trying to fly to the chandelier on the top. The huge wings rolled up waves of turbulence, as if a tornado suddenly blew up on the flat ground. The strong air current carried many guests flying out of the hole. Some guests who were closer to the hole were rolled out of the window with a whoop. At this moment, most of the guests have not yet woken up and are still immersed in their world of memories. The criminals retreated to a corner of the Sihai Hall to protect Sun Qixin from being assassinated. The soldiers of the escort were shooting at the giant moth frantically. Chu Chang'e and Uncle Tong are missing and are probably still looking for opportunities to assassinate Sun Qixin. In the collision just now, Yang Yuyan was swept to the other side of the lobby, carefully hiding herself. At this moment, the only person in the entire Sihai Hall who is awake and has nothing to do is probably Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng was not idle either. Just when the peaches were rolling around on the ground, he suddenly noticed the title on the peaches. A random money peach. A flat peach with random points. A randomly restored flat peach. Among them, the number of random money is the most, followed by the number of random points, and the number of random recovery is the least. At this time, there must be 100 flat peaches that have fallen on the ground and have not been eaten. How could Lu Sheng miss this opportunity? He quickly bent over and picked up peaches all over the ground. Pick up random recovery first, then pick up random points. Only when random money rolls to your feet will you pick it up with your hands. Lu Sheng had already put on that mirror armor. Even if you are hit by a laser bullet, you will only hear a scream of "ah" coming from the distance. It was probably because the guard soldier accidentally shot himself and was injured by his armor. Then a magical scene appeared in the entire lobby. The soldiers of the Tianhe guards were engaged in a fierce exchange of fire with the fluttering moth. Laser beams filled the room. However, under such intense laser bombs, a fat man squatted on the ground seriously and picked up peaches as if nothing had happened. Not only that, every time the fat man was hit by a laser beam, a Tianhe guardsman would scream and fall to the ground injured. Li Jinlong was furious. I am here to fight to the death with the mutated beasts, while you benefit from squatting on the ground. Even I can only eat one flat peach a year, and you picked up 30 or 40 in one go. Not only that, but he accidentally injured more than a dozen of his own soldiers. This is simply unreasonable. Li Jinlong took advantage of the fact that he was wearing A-level armor and fired at Lu Sheng. Ouch! Fire another shot. Oh my god. After 2 shots, Li Jinlong knocked himself to the ground. The adjutant beside him was shocked. Captain, you were shot. Li Jinlong felt unspeakably aggrieved. Find 2 people to carry me out. The rest of you will continue to beat the moth for me. Be careful not to accidentally injure the city lord, and don't hit the fat man again. Yang Yuyan in the corner looked at Lu Sheng's back and couldn't help but be full of curiosity about this fat man. He is obviously an amateur, but how come he has so many weird abilities? He has superb fighting skills, knows how to break through the incense, and can survive the laser attack unscathed. What puzzled her the most was how, as an undercover agent, he could accurately know the identities and missions of others. Unknowingly, Yang Yuyan was lost in thought. By the time she reacted, she didn't know how many seconds had passed. She quickly looked nervously at her task list. I was surprised to find that in the weekly tasks, I couldn't think that others were still 0/3, and there was no additional penalty for myself. Yang Yuyan breathed a sigh of relief. It turns out that after thinking about it for so long, it didn't last more than 3 seconds. Lu Sheng was still concentrating on squatting on the ground picking peaches. In just a short time, he had picked up no less than 70 flat peaches. If it hadn't been for this sudden accident, he might never have had the chance to pick up so many flat peaches in his life. It can be considered a blessing in disguise. At this moment, a cold muzzle was pressed against Lu Sheng's head. Lu Sheng was stunned for a moment. Then he raised his head and looked up along the barrel of the gun, and found that it was Sun Qishan who was pointing the gun at him. Lu Sheng's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Logically speaking, the new copy Sun Qishan should not recognize himself, but from the eyes of the man in front of him, he clearly saw the anger that could not be hidden. Sure enough, Sun Qishan gritted his teeth and said, "Fat man, we meet again." Lu Sheng was taken aback and blurted out, "You know me." Sun Qishan snorted from his nose. "There are not many people I can remember, but I can recognize the person who destroyed my Mecha Monkey King and turned into ashes. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have to suffer the humiliation here today." Cold sweat trickled down Lu Sheng's back, and he quickly added, "I was indeed reckless that day, but this time I am an undercover agent protecting you. Without me, you would have been assassinated several times before." "I know." Sun Qishan interrupted Lu Sheng very calmly. "You know." Lu Sheng was surprised. Sun Qishan nodded and showed a playful smile. "Who do you think hired you to kill me?" Lu Sheng thought for a moment and suddenly opened his eyes wide. "Is it you? Are you the person behind our scenes?" Sun Qishan smiled noncommittally. Lu Sheng felt like his brain was about to short-circuit. How in this world could someone hire someone else to assassinate him? "Why are you doing this?" Lu Sheng almost blurted out. Sun Qishan laughed loudly and whispered into Lu Sheng's ear, "Who am I? How can I accept peace talks willingly? If someone hadn't tried to kill me, there would be no reason for me to stir up trouble at the Peach Blossom banquet." Lu Sheng suddenly realized, so the crispy powder in the basement and the identity tags of the criminals were all deliberately arranged by you in the hope that we could use them to kill you. Sun Qishan nodded. The fat guy is not too stupid. This will not only give us a reason to take action, but also poison all these losers. In Lu Sheng's mind, some questions that were originally unclear were finally explained. No wonder the photos on the information wall are fake. There are undercover agents in the assassination team, and you can wake up from your memories as soon as you get a little bit of incense. It turns out that all this was your arrangement. Sun Qishan proudly tapped Lu Sheng's forehead with his gun. "Of course, I just want you to cause some trouble, but I don't really want to kill myself. I just didn't expect that there are weapons among you that drop health based on a percentage. It almost killed me. Otherwise, your junk-like equipment won't pose a threat to me at all." Lu Sheng, who had figured everything out, suddenly felt very bored. What I thought was a well-planned assassination operation ended up just playing 3 games of house with others. Everything has been arranged by others. Lu Sheng even suspected that even if his assassination plan was full of loopholes, they would pretend to be tricked just to practice with him until the peach feast in the evening. Lu Sheng sighed boringly. "Okay, now that the task is basically completed, what are you going to do, burn bridges?" Sun Qishan reached out and touched the mustache on his chin. "Speaking of which, according to the original plan, I wanted to get rid of you. But I saw you, and suddenly I wanted to give you a chance to make up for your mistakes." Lu Sheng didn't believe that Sun Qishan could have such kind intentions, so he asked, "What chance?" Sun Qishan did not answer this question immediately, but asked, "Have you ever thought about it? If I don't want peace talks, I just don't come to the Sky City for the Peach Blossom banquet. Why do I have to spend so much time planning all this?" After Sun Qishan's reminder, Lu Sheng finally thought of the unreasonableness of Sun Qishan's move. "Why? Because I do have something that I have to come up to get. And I don't have the chance to get this thing normally. I can only get it when the peach banquet is in chaos." "What?" "The core essence necessary to repair the right leg of the great sage's mecha. This thing is only available in the Tushita factory. It is usually heavily guarded there, but only tonight, we have the opportunity to sneak in during the chaos." Lu Sheng seemed to understand what Sun Qishan meant when he said this to him. "So you mean, let me help you get the nuclear sperm?" Sun Qishan nodded naturally. "Atone for your sins with your merits, as I just said." "Why don't you go yourself?" "Because as long as I'm here, they will send all the troops over. I can help you delay." Lu Sheng looked at Sun Qishan doubtfully. "Then you're not afraid that I'll take the things and run away?" Sun Qishan looked confident. "The core essence is of no use to you. Give me the core essence. In return, I can give you something good." After that, he looked at Lu Sheng and asked again, "How about it? Do you agree?" Lu Sheng glanced at the muzzle of the gun that was still pressed against his forehead, and nodded helplessly. Good. As soon as he finished speaking, a new message popped up in his taskbar. Hidden mission update. Steal the core essence of the old army. Please go to the Tushita factory in the west of Sky City within 50 minutes to steal the nuclear essence inside and give it to Sun Kishan 49. Lu Sheng glanced at the gate that was tightly blocked by the Tianhe guards, and asked aloud. How do I get down? I also have a silly moth who will be here soon. At the same time, a region-wide broadcast appeared in front of all players. Congratulations to the **** player in Area 4 for successfully unlocking the hidden mission, stealing the core essence of the old army. Yang Yuyan, Chu Chang'e, and Uncle Tong, who were hiding in a corner, all looked at Lu Sheng in front of Sun Kishan with surprise. At this time, this fat man can still successfully unlock the hidden mission. At this moment, Yang Yuyan suddenly heard a loud boom from behind her. Another huge moth crashed through the French window behind her. Si Haitang, which had already been poked with a big hole, suddenly had another huge hole. The two holes formed a perfect opposition, giving the strong wind that could only enter and exit suddenly an outlet. A wave of wind and waves stronger than the torrent immediately appeared in the lobby. It pours in from one hole and spurts out from another. Countless tables, chairs, guests, and girls were rushed out of the lobby in a blink of an eye and thrown 200 to 300 meters into the air. Li Jinlong's hoarse roar came from outside the Sihai Hall. Hurry up and save people! Hurry up and save people! Yang Yuyan was not spared. Since the hole was right behind her, she had no time to dodge and was instantly sucked out of the hole by the strong wind. At the critical moment, Yang Yuyan hooked her hand on a corner of the glass window frame to prevent her from falling from the building. Her whole body hung in the air, and she tried hard with her hands to climb up from the window. However, people and debris kept being scraped out of the cave entrance in Sihaitang, making it difficult for Yang Yuyan to climb up. Hundreds of meters high, life hangs on a thread. But there's something worse. Boom! A bullet suddenly struck from a distance and penetrated the glass on Yang Yuyan's right side. The glass shards scratched her right hand, leaving a deep wound immediately. Yang Yuyan raised her head in horror and saw a cold light flashing across the beams of Sihai Hall. That's the reflection from the scope. It's Uncle Tong. Yang Yuyan couldn't help crying in her heart. Uncle Tong was seeking revenge against the undercover agent and wanted to vent his anger. Yang Yuyan didn't dare to show her head. She was very sure that the Angel Guild sniper instructor's marksmanship was enough to kill her the moment she showed her head. He had no choice but to grit his teeth and crawl to the side in the air. However, Uncle Tong didn't give her any chance to breathe. Bang, 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 were 3 more shots. Wherever Yang Yuyan climbed, the glass above her head was shattered. The crumbs were like snowflakes, falling all over her head. Her right hand gradually lost strength due to blood loss. At this moment, I can only rely on my left hand to support myself. Under the strong wind, it won't take long for him to run out of energy and fall to his death. Under the black veil, Yang Yuyan's face was ashen. Even though I have experienced so many copies, I have never been so desperate as now. Especially when she saw Chu Chang'e appear behind the glass window holding a laser pistol. The continuous sound of glass exploding at the entrance also attracted Lu Sheng's attention. He soon saw Yang Yuyan struggling high in the sky. Like a rootless duckweed, helpless and fragile. Falling from a building is different from being eliminated. Once you die, you will disappear from every world. Logically speaking, Lu Sheng and Yang Yuyan can only be regarded as strangers who have had a relationship with each other. Lu Sheng has absolutely no reason to fight for her. But the magic is that the marriage contract made the stranger Lu Sheng feel an inexplicable bond. He wanted to save Yang Yuyan desperately. Lu Sheng hugged the pillars of the performance stage tightly and shouted at Sun Kishan. Your big moth is here, how should I get down? Sun Kishan replied loudly. There is a pocket under the silly moth's body, and there is an airborne jacket inside. Lu Sheng glanced at the big moth that kept fluttering on the ground and cursed in his heart. With a kick of his feet, he pounced on the big moth. He quickly reached into the pocket under Damo's body, took out his airborne jacket and put it on. Then he pressed his body against the ground, kicked the big moth hard, and used the inertia to slide quickly towards the entrance of the hole. At this time, Chu Chang'e had already raised his laser gun and pointed it at Yang Yuyan's hands. You and your fat guy partner are really good at deceiving a few of us. But it can be regarded as karma. You still fell into my hands. Within the dungeon, life and death are uncertain. We belong to different camps, so don't blame me. The moment Yang Yuyan saw Chu Chang'e appear, she knew that today would probably be a bad day. No matter how skilled she was, there was no possibility of escape in the current situation. In an instant, many memories flashed before my eyes. She thought of her father, mother and 3 brothers. Thinking of Ji Yu Xiaoxiao and her Shengxian guild. And the grandfather he wanted to save wholeheartedly, but unexpectedly he had to walk in front of him. They must all be very sad. Yang Yuyan sighed secretly. She didn't want to be shot by Chu Chang'e and broke her hands. She decided to let go of her hands and leave decently. Just when she was about to let go, a familiar voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Chu Chang'e, let this woman go. This voice was clear and calm, but Chu Chang'e only found it funny. You want me to let her go? You don't look at your current situation and you still want to be a hero and save her. It's a joke. As he spoke, he pursed his lips in the direction of the beam. Uncle Tong must be targeting your back now. He wants to beat you into a sieve. It's a good time that you're here. It saves us having to look for you again. Yang Yuyan sighed and shook her head gently towards Lu Sheng. In this situation, trying to save yourself would be tantamount to death. It was just a chance encounter with him, so there was no need to lose his life for him. But I saw Lu Sheng leaning on the floor-to-ceiling window frame and said calmly. You made a mistake. It's you who want to save her, not me. Chu Chang'e seemed to have heard the funniest joke in his life and looked at Lu Sheng like a fool. You two are undercover, so that we are about to fail the mission, and now you want me to save her. Are you crazy, or am I crazy? Lu Sheng smiled slightly. Both of us are not crazy. You volunteered to save her. After speaking, in front of Chu Chang'e, he raised the laser pistol and put it against his temple. If you kill her, I will shoot myself. By then, only you and Uncle Tong will be left in the assassination team, and your personal mission will fail. And I don't trust Uncle Tong alone. Can complete the assassination mission. Chu Chang'e suddenly remembered that he still had a personal task that he had not yet completed. And his personal mission is to survive at least 3 people by the end of the instance. Once Lu Sheng and Yang Yuyan are eliminated at the same time, he will also be eliminated immediately. Chu Chang'e suddenly froze on the spot. He looked into Lu Sheng's eyes in confusion and surprise. I found that these eyes were calm and determined, and they were not kidding me. I was so confused for a moment that I didn't know how to make a decision. Also shocked was Yang Yuyan. Lu Sheng's current appearance is nearly 50 pounds lighter than the photo on the marriage certificate. In addition, Yang Yuyan did not dare to stare at his face for a long time, so in Yang Yuyan's eyes, Lu Sheng was clearly a stranger. She never expected that a stranger would risk his life to save her. Lu Sheng's fat profile suddenly became different in her eyes. It was as if a leaf suddenly fell on a calm lake, creating a circle of ripples. Yang Yuyan's heartstrings were gently plucked. Lu Sheng had no idea what kind of waves his actions just now stirred up in Yang Yuyan's heart. He was just staring at Chu Chang'e with all his attention, feeling more nervous than anyone else. He doesn't understand Chu Chang'e. It is completely uncertain whether Chu Chang'e would rather give up his personal mission in order to vent his anger. He could only gamble. If he won the gamble, he might be able to save Yang Yuyan's life. If you lose the bet, you will lose your life. He didn't know if it was worth it, and he didn't even believe that he would do this. Lu Sheng saw that the expression on Chu Chang'e's face had relaxed, and he quickly struck while the iron was hot and said, I can make a deal with you. As long as you let her go, I will leave with her immediately and will never disrupt the assassination operation of you and Uncle Tong. The success or failure of the final mission is entirely up to you, how about it? Chu Chang'e seemed to be moved by Lu Sheng's words. After weighing it in his mind, he said, You promise. Once a word is spoken, it is hard to follow. Chu Chang'e said no more, silently put down the laser gun in his hand, and took a step back to the side, just in the path of Uncle Tong's shooting. You can take her away, but make sure she survives. Lu Sheng breathed a long sigh of relief and quickly ran towards Yang Yuyan, who was already exhausted. He leaned down and grabbed her hand, pulled her into his arms, and then jumped from a height of 100 meters. The airborne suit behind him quickly ignited, carrying Lu Sheng and Yang Yuyan, and slowly fell towards the west. 5 minutes later, the two finally landed on the ground. Lu Sheng quickly let go of the hand holding Yang Yuyan. Unexpectedly, Yang Yuyan was still exhausted at this moment, her feet went weak, and she fell down. Lu Sheng was startled and quickly hugged her into his arms. Then he slowly helped her sit on the ground. Yang Yuyan lowered her head and said nothing, but her face was as red and hot as if it was on fire. This was the first time she was held in the arms of a strange man like this. Lu Sheng looked down at Yang Yuyan's right hand and found that her hand had become very pale due to excessive bleeding. He quickly took out a flat peach from the item list and handed it over. Here, I just picked up this flat peach. It has a random recovery effect. Eat this first and see if it can help you stop the bleeding. Yang Yuyan looked at the peach in surprise. She didn't expect that this peach could have such an amazing effect. No wonder he was lying on the ground just now and frantically picking up peaches. Yang Yuyan then opened her mouth and took a bite, and suddenly she felt full of strength. So he stretched out his finger and wrote on the ground. Physical recovery. Lu Sheng said, "Oh," and took out another flat peach and handed it over. Then try this one again. Yang Yuyan obediently took the peach and took another bite. This time she felt refreshed and her brain was particularly clear. So he reached out and wrote, "Regain your sanity." Lu Sheng scratched his head. "It's okay. I still have it. I don't believe it hasn't recovered." With that said, he took out a flat peach from the item list again and handed it to Yang Yuyan. Yang Yuyan knew that flat peaches were very precious, so she ate 2 in a row and was too embarrassed to eat them again. Lu Sheng saw her thoughts and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I just picked up 100 small ones, you can eat them." In fact, what Lu Sheng told was not entirely true, because among the nearly 100 peaches he picked up, less than 20 were randomly recovered. Yang Yuyan had already eaten 1/10 of it this time. Yang Yuyan heard Lu Sheng say that he had picked up more than 100, and then she took another bite. At this time, you can see that the wounds all over the body are healing rapidly. After a while, the whole body returned to ruddy color, without any sign of injury. At this moment, Yang Yuyan is in good health, full of energy and clear in mind. It's simply better than when I first downloaded the copy. She couldn't help but secretly marvel in her heart. If this was put into the real world, this alone would be a priceless treasure. Seeing that Yang Yuyan had completely recovered, Lu Sheng smiled and said to her, "We were lucky this time. The 2 undercover agents actually persisted until the end. Now I have another task, which was just given to me by Sun Kishan. He asked me to go to the Tushita factory and help him steal something called nuclear essence. Should we say goodbye, or should you come with me to see it?" Yang Yuyan lowered her eyes and pointed towards the south of Sky City. Lu Sheng suddenly beamed. "Wait while I find a motorcycle, and we'll set off now." The two people were traveling at lightning speed and soon arrived at a military-restricted area in the westernmost part of the Sky City. The words, "High Voltage Electricity Danger," are written on the wire fence as far as the eye can see. There was a guard team of as many as 20 people at the door, patrolling back and forth in strict discipline. It would be difficult for even a fly to fly in. Lu Sheng couldn't help but secretly complain in his heart. This doesn't look like someone who could sneak in during the chaos. Yang Yuyan patted Lu Sheng's shoulder gently, pointed to the barbed wire fence in the distance, and motioned for Lu Sheng to follow her. Lu Sheng then followed Yang Yuyan and quietly ran towards the barbed wire fence in the distance. The two ran for about a kilometer before stopping in front of a secluded barbed wire fence. The surroundings were silent at this time, and no one from the Tianhe guards could be seen. It seems that what Sun Kishan said is indeed correct. A large number of soldiers here have also been transferred to support the city lord's palace. Lu Sheng saw Yang Yuyan take out a bottle of insecticide-like substance from the props bar like magic, and then sprayed it on the barbed wire fence. The nozzle of the insecticide sprays white foamy fluid. The moment these fluids hit the barbed wire, they were quickly wrapped around the outside, forming an insulating layer. Yang Yuyan sprayed an insulating net nearly 2 meters wide before stopping. Then he quickly touched the internet with the back of his hand. Safe and sound. She then grabbed it with both hands and pulled it back hard. After confirming that the fastness was okay, he climbed up very quickly. Yang Yuyan was wearing dark red tight-fitting soft armor today, with special black stockings underneath. When climbing over the barbed wire fence, the figure looks like a crescent moon, giving it a very impactful beauty. Lu Sheng was stunned for a moment. Yang Yuyan, who had turned over to the other side of the iron net, waved to Lu Sheng, telling him to hurry up and come over. Lu Sheng then followed Yang Yuyan's example, grabbing the iron net and pushing up hard. Although the process seemed a bit embarrassing, it was still over. The two of them quickly approached the Tushita factory under the moonlight. What Lu Sheng didn't expect was that the defense inside was extremely loose. It was as if all the security forces were concentrated at the gate just now. Yang Yuyan effortlessly knocked down the two security guards at the side door of the factory to the ground. The two of them sneaked into the factory without any hindrance. In the factory, dozens of huge furnaces are working in an orderly manner. On the giant finished product rack nearby, there are various large-scale mechanical parts that have been completed. It looks like it's for a fighting mech. Lu Sheng noticed that there was a fluorescent sign at the stairwell of the factory. Detailed information about each floor is marked on it. The first floor is the smelting platform, finished mecha cabinets and consumables warehouse. The second floor is a showroom for some fine weapons. On the third floor, there is a power secret room marked with a star. On the top floor, there is a top equipment collection room. Lu Sheng clicked on the power secret room on the sign. I guess the core spirit should be here. Let's go up and have a look. Yang Yuyan nodded slightly, and the two of them ran straight to the third floor. Except for 3 to 4 workers on the third floor of the entire factory, there is not a single soldier on duty. The two of them arrived at the door of the power chamber easily. There is a coded door. Lu Sheng looked intently at the password door, and a blue title slowly emerged. A password door with a 10-digit password. He then lightly clicked on the title entry of 10-digit password and the attribute details popped up. Title entry: 10-digit password. Attribute details: 57782167002. Simple and straightforward, not a single extra word. The moment Yang Yuyan saw the password door, she frowned slightly. She pointed to the workers in the distance and motioned to grab one and ask them, but was stopped by Lu Sheng. Let me try it first. As Lu Sheng spoke, he pressed the 10 numbers 5,778,216,702 on the password door, and the door lock immediately heard the sound of unlocking. Unlocked successfully. Yang Yuyan froze on the spot, and Lu Sheng hurriedly explained. I have a tool for unlocking, let's go in. Yang Yuyan nodded doubtfully, and cautiously pushed the door open with Lu Sheng. The entire power chamber was dark, but there was a square booth in the middle. The straight line distance between the two of them was about 200 meters. There are 3 crimson spheres suspended above. Visually, it is only as big as a glass marble. The whole body exudes a faint red light. Lu Sheng and the two were about to step forward when suddenly the floor tiles in the entire room collapsed, revealing a pool of green water below, exuding the pungent smell unique to chemical reagents. Lu Sheng glanced at the title on Kai Shui. A pool of highly corrosive sulfur water. He quickly pulled Yang Yuyan back a step. Be careful, this is extremely corrosive sulfur water. A series of bubbles suddenly appeared in the sulfur pool, and then a black and white stone brick path floated up from the sulfur water. This path circles the entire secret room, like a lingering dragon, gradually approaching the square booth in the center. Yang Yuyan glanced at the black and white path, took out a mirror from her belongings and threw it over. The mirror fell on the black stone bricks, and suddenly the stone bricks gave off a burst of light and then disappeared out of thin air. The mirror immediately fell into the sulfur pool, made a soft, kai, sound, and quickly disappeared. Then the entire trail disappeared at the same time, and resurfaced from the bottom of the pool 5 seconds later. It turned out to be a mechanism trail. In other words, it is a series of randomly generated 0 and 1 keys. Only the owner of the secret room can obtain the accurate mechanism password and approach the nuclear spirit booth. If ordinary people want to follow all the stone brick roads purely by luck, the success rate is less than 1 in 100 million. No wonder the door only uses an ordinary 10-digit code door. No wonder Sun Qishan asked himself to collect the nuclear essence. Fortunately, Lu Sheng was not an ordinary person. He casually glanced at the 2 stone bricks on the first level. The black one says, a stone brick as stable as Mount High. The white one says, a stone brick that falls off when touched. To be on the safe side, Lu Sheng also took out a laser pistol and threw it over. The laser pistol landed steadily on the black stone bricks, and this time the stone bricks did not disappear. Lu Sheng was still uneasy and looked up at the 2 stone bricks on the second level. This time it was still black and it said, a strong stone brick. The white one says, a weak stone brick. Lu Sheng once again threw a laser pistol at the black stone bricks. But because the second step was too far away, I missed the throw this time and fell straight into the sulfur pool. Lu Sheng shook his head, took out another handful and threw it out. Yang Yuan was stunned instantly. A laser pistol can be sold for nearly 100,000 yuan on the player forum. Why does this fat man throw it away like a stone? Even the Shungshan Guild is reluctant to throw it away like this. What kind of family conditions does this fat man have? This time the pistol landed firmly on the black stone bricks, and it was as strong as the name said. It seems there is no problem. Lu Sheng gestured to Yang Yuan to wait for him here, and with a quick jump, he jumped onto the first black stone brick. Landed safely, no problem. Then comes the second stone brick. Lu Sheng kicked hard with both feet, and his body once again drew a cute arc in the air and then fell down again. Lu Sheng was shocked and instinctively stretched out his hand to grab. Fortunately, the distance between the 2 stone bricks this time was only more than 1 meter, and he was finally able to hang on the stone bricks without any risk. Yang Yuan, who was standing nearby, was also so frightened that she broke into a cold sweat. A heart pounding. I thought to myself that this fat man seemed to have good skills in the afternoon, but why is he suddenly so clumsy that he looks like a different person? Lu Sheng himself was also scared, so he decided to bear the pain and change to the title of agility. However, the system reported an error at this time, reminding him that he had insufficient points. Lu Sheng quickly checked his personal attributes and found that he had only 3 points left on the ladder without even realizing it. Once again, we returned to before liberation. At this moment, Lu Sheng suddenly smelled a gust of fragrant wind, and then saw Yang Yuan jumping next to him. Due to the small size of the stone bricks, Yang Yuan could only stand close to herself. Their arms were touching, and Lu Sheng lowered his head and could smell the fragrance of Yang Yuan's hair. Yang Yuan did not raise her head, but pointed to the 2 stone bricks on the 3rd level. Lu Sheng was surprised. You believe me? Yang Yuan nodded without any hesitation. Lu Sheng felt inexplicably moved in his heart. If you take one wrong step on the stone path, your bones will disappear. But Yang Yuan plans to move forward on her behalf, which requires a lot of trust in herself. Lu Sheng couldn't help but feel a little nervous. He took a deep breath and then said, "White." Without a moment's hesitation, Yang Yuan jumped out with a slight bend in her body. Her body was very light in the air, like an elegant kitten, landing on the white stone bricks gently and deftly. The stone bricks did not disappear as expected, and Lu Sheng was right again. Yang Yuan did not look back, but continued to point at the 2 stone bricks on the 4th level. Black, white, 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 comma. The 2 of them are like old friends who work together tacitly. Lu Sheng is showing off the colors here, and Yang Yuan is jumping lightly on the other side. After a while, Yang Yuan arrived at the square booth. She saw a green switch button on the booth, so she pressed it gently. Suddenly the lights in the room brightened, and all the floor tiles that had just collapsed rose back up. The agency has been lifted. Lu Sheng breathed a sigh of relief and walked towards Yang Yuan. At this time, Yang Yuan pointed to a line of instructions under the booth and waved to herself. Lu Sheng walked forward and saw the instruction manual saying, "Nuclear essence is condensed by compressing nuclear energy 1,000 times. A single nuclear essence contains the energy released by the explosion of hundreds of atomic bombs. Therefore, theoretically, it can be used as a perpetual energy source for use by combat mechas. Since it is extremely difficult to compress core essences, our factory has been researching for decades and has only successfully compressed 5 of them. Therefore, the conditions for the experiment are extremely harsh. Currently, they are only approved for use in the bodies of the super mechas Great Sage and Three-Eyed General. The test results were beyond imagination, and the combat effectiveness of both mechas showed a geometric increase. Lu Sheng suddenly realized that it was no wonder that Sun Qixin came to attend the peach banquet even at his own risk. It turned out that he was the one who hit him by mistake. The energy supply core essence installed in his mecha's right leg was reduced to energy and dissipated in the world. Without the core essence, the Monkey King's mecha also lacks super combat effectiveness. Sun Qixin had to find a way to obtain a new nuclear essence. Lu Sheng couldn't help but have some doubts in his heart. Why is such a precious core essence in the great sage mecha of Sun Qixin, the leader of the guilty people? What is the relationship between Sun Qixin and Sky City? But this is not something he can think clearly now. Lu Sheng stretched out his hand and took out all 3 core essences. He put 2 of them into his inventory, and then handed the remaining one to Yang Yuyan. Yang Yuyan was surprised when she looked at the nuclear essence handed to her. Are the few core essences that have been refined for decades in the Tushita factory something that can be taken away casually? Lu Sheng saw that Yang Yuyan did not pick up the nuclear essence, so he directly put the nuclear essence into her hand. You, me, and Sun Qixin each have just one. They are all here. Everyone who sees it has a share. You should put it away quickly. At the same time, the siren was blaring in the Tushita factory. It seemed that taking away all the nuclear essence at the same time would still trigger the alarm. This time it was Yang Yuyan who grabbed Lu Sheng and ran out of the secret room door. The two ran all the way out of the factory from the 3rd floor. On the way, they only encountered a few workers and security guards who came to ask questions. They were all subdued by Yang Yuyan with one move. It wasn't until the 2 of them were running wildly in the open space outside the factory that the soldiers of the Tianhe guards finally appeared. But the number of people was much smaller than expected. Just 2 off-road vehicles and more than 10 people. Yang Yuyan pushed Lu Sheng behind a slope, and then quickly took out her moon-chasing bow from the equipment slot. With a flip of his hand, 6 groups of 5 cold light arrows instantly flew out. The rain of arrows in the sky is more terrifying than the laser beam, and it will explode in the air when attacked. The extremely cold breath exploded with the cold light arrow, immediately freezing the more than 10 guard soldiers who were chasing them into popsicles. Yang Yuyan didn't stop at all, turned around neatly, grabbed Lu Sheng and ran towards the insulating net. The motorcycle the 2 came from was still parked on the ground 1 kilometer in front of the barbed wire fence. Perhaps because she was worried that Lu Sheng's driving skills were average, Yang Yuyan pulled Lu Sheng into her back seat without saying a word. After a burst of engine roar, Yang Yuyan rushed to the city lord's mansion with Lu Sheng. Behind them, 3 off-road vehicles full of Tianhe guard soldiers also rushed out from the barbed wire fence and followed Yang Yuyan's motorcycle in hot pursuit. At this time, Lu Sheng's side mission was updated. Side mission update. Please go to Nantianmen quickly and hand over the nuclear essence to Sun Qixin before Sun Qixin leaves. 1459. Lu Sheng said quickly. Go to Nantianmen to find Sun Qixin. We only have 15 minutes. Yang Yuyan immediately turned the brakes and pressed her right foot harder on the ground. The rear of the motorcycle swept across, then turned around and headed south of the city. The whole process was extremely smooth, as if Lu Sheng, a 180-pound fat man, didn't exist. Lu Sheng couldn't help but admire that the physical fitness of the Super Union members was really far beyond that of ordinary people. In order to get rid of the pursuit of the off-road vehicles behind her, Yang Yuyan drove her motorcycle through alleys one after another. From time to time, boxes and sundries piled outside were knocked over by motorcycles. There were continuous curses coming from behind, and Lu Sheng apologized over and over again. With 5 minutes left, Nantianmen has appeared in front of us. At this time, the guards on the Nantianmen city wall were still fighting with several large mutant beasts brought by the sinners. The number of soldiers on duty at the door was nearly half less than before. Seeing that she was getting closer and closer to the city gate, Yang Yuyan suddenly put her hands on the handlebars and stood up from her seat. The back of his spine was widened, he fully drew the moon-chasing bow, and with lightning speed, he shot 3 groups of cold light arrows toward the left, right, and diagonally above the gate. The arrow body also exploded in the air, freezing the soldiers guarding the gate into ice sculptures. The motorcycle rushed past Nantianmen and headed straight out of the city. At this time, outside Nantianmen, a giant transport mecha stopped on the edge of the cliff. The 4 motors roared loudly and were about to leave the ground. Sun Qixin was still standing in front of the hatch and looking in the direction of Nantianmen. When he saw Yang Yuyan and Lu Sheng, a smile suddenly appeared on his face. I knew you could make it. This was the first time Lu Sheng saw a smile on Sun Qixin's face, which was even uglier than crying. He took out the nuclear essence from the equipment slot and handed it into Sun Qixin's hands, breathing heavily. Here's the good thing I promised you. Sun Qixin laughed and took out 3 ropes from his body and handed them to Lu Sheng. Here, this is my stand in Sun Lure. If you burn a rope, he will appear once. How about it, are you a surprise? Lu Sheng looked at Sun Qixin dumbfounded. That's it, no more. Isn't my substitute enough? Lu Sheng couldn't help but curse, but in the end he reluctantly endured it because a bunch of criminals were pointing guns at his head. That's a nuclear spirit. I almost died trying to get it. Sun Qixin laughed loudly, waved to Lu Sheng, turned around and got into the mecha cabin. With my substitute in the future, you won't be able to die. As the transport mecha jumped down from the sea of clouds in the sky, a voice appeared in Lu Sheng's ears. Congratulations to player Lu Sheng for completing the second act of the Afterlife Flower and Lotus of the Other Side series of copies, The Peach Feast. The main mission of protecting Sun Qixin and leaving safely was successfully completed. The personal mission of Night Wolf was successfully completed. You will leave the dungeon world in 10 seconds and start the task settlement. The moment the voice sounded, Yang Yuyan immediately handed a bracelet to Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng was confused for a while. You want to give me a rope too? Yang Yuyan shook her head and gestured to Lu Sheng to see the Shengxian Guild ornament on her bracelet. She actually wanted to tell Lu Sheng that this bracelet was her personal token. With it, she could go to Shengxian Guild to find her if she encounters difficulties in the future. Lu Sheng took the bracelet without understanding, and only smelled a pleasant floral fragrance on it. So he said to Yang Yuyan, "Thanks." This thank you made Yang Yuyan's heart shake. This was what she should have said to Lu Sheng. Thinking about it carefully, it seems that I have been under the help of this man since I downloaded the dungeon and successfully passed the level now. Without his desperate protection, I would have failed 3 or 4 times. This made her, as the captain of the Shengxian Guild, accustomed to protecting others, somewhat uncomfortable. But speaking from the bottom of my heart, when I am with the fat man in front of me, I do feel very at ease. It's a peace of mind that I haven't experienced in a long time. The countdown is still going on. 5, 4, 3. Yang Yuyan and Lu Sheng stood side by side, looking at the surging sea of clouds in front of them. Just when the countdown was about to end, Yang Yuyan suddenly spoke and said to Lu Sheng, "Thanks." Lu Sheng was stunned. This was the first time he heard Yang Yuyan speak since he downloaded the dungeon. He was not as cold as he remembered when they first met. The voice is gentle and a little hot. Lu Sheng then returned a gentle smile to Yang Yuyan. What Lu Sheng didn't know was what this thank you meant to Yang Yuyan. This means that she will decide to give up the effort of persisting for an entire instance and be rewarded with up to 100 points. She just wanted to express her gratitude to this person she thought was a stranger. Time and space changed before Lu Sheng's eyes, and he once again came to that spotless world. Lines of text slowly flashed before his eyes. Now begins the copy settlement process. Congratulations on completing the side mission Wolf of the Night, plus 30 points, plus 200,000 money. Congratulations on completing the main mission to protect Sun Qixin, plus 30 points, plus 200,000 money. Congratulations to the veteran for completing the hidden mission, plus 30 points, plus 3 million money. The first batch to participate in the dungeon test and get plus 50 points. The first grand prize in the area, you will get a chance to draw a treasure box. Lu Sheng did not expect that this time he would win the first prize in the region. He guessed it might be related to the fact that he had cleared the hidden mission. 5 treasure boxes appeared in front of Lu Sheng one after another. A treasure chest of good quality. A unique treasure box. A treasure chest not to be missed. A treasure chest that opens with surprises. A useless trash can. The quality of the 5 treasure chests this time is obviously much better than before. But it also added to Lu Sheng's choice. It's no longer possible to tell at a glance which one is best. Lu Sheng thought for a moment and chose that a unique treasure box. Maybe most people have a soft spot for uniqueness. The treasure chest was immediately opened, and what was inside was actually a diamond ring. Item name: Monster Diamond Ring. Prop rating: Epic A. Introduction to props. If you lie, you will be punished. Once a person wearing a diamond ring tells a lie, he will gradually turn into a monster. It will not be until he drinks 10 freshly squeezed lemon juice that he can gradually change back. It's really an interesting prop. The task reward settlement was completed, and time passed before Lu Sheng's eyes again. When he opened his eyes again, he had returned to Lao Yang's home. This time the copy mission was very short, only 1 day passed. It was just Wednesday, 3:47 in the afternoon. Lu Sheng sat on the bed in the guest room and opened his properties panel. Name: Lu Sheng. First career: none, 50,000 points to awaken. Money: 12,204,112. Ladder points: 143 points. After downloading 2 copies in a row, Lu Sheng's money skyrocketed to more than 12 million. But the points are still only a pitiful 143 points, which leaves him with so much money but nothing to do. Lu Sheng suddenly remembered the more than 50 random points flat peaches in the item bar. I happen to be hungry now, so I'll try eating a few first to see how many points I can get. The effect of random points of flat peach only appears when the last bite is eaten. So Lu Sheng had to patiently eat the entire flat peach. At this time, I saw a small red dot appear in the notification bar in front of me. Congratulations on winning the third prize, plus 70 points. In the attribute column, the ladder points automatically changed to 213 points. Lu Sheng stood up from the bed with a bang. A third prize actually awarded me up to 70 points, which was almost the same as the next copy. Lu Sheng immediately excitedly took out 5 flat peaches from the toolbar and placed them neatly on the table. I didn't expect that one day I could earn ladder points just by eating. Who wouldn't be able to do this? Lu Sheng immediately finished another flat peach in a hurry. Congratulations on winning the participation prize, plus 5 points. Only 5 points. Lu Sheng was immediately discouraged and quickly grabbed the next flat peach and stuffed it into his mouth. Congratulations on winning the participation prize, plus 5 points. Congratulations on winning the participation prize, plus 5 points. Congratulations on winning the participation prize, plus 5 points. Lu Sheng ate 3 flat peaches in a row, and all of them were participation awards, adding up to only 20 points. At this moment, my stomach was already full and I felt extremely depressed. I thought I had found a shortcut to get rich, but I didn't expect that a third prize had exhausted all my luck. Lu Sheng looked at the last flat peach on the table and gritted his teeth. Eat another one. I don't believe you can give out another participation award. So he picked up the flat peach with difficulty and began to swallow it bite by bite. After chewing for 20 minutes, I finally finished the whole peach. At this time Lu Sheng had collapsed on the bed, exhausted. Unexpectedly, one day, I would be exhausted from eating. At this time, the red dot lit up again in the notification bar. Lu Sheng clicks on the notification information. Congratulations on winning the first prize, plus 1024 points. Seeing that the points in the attribute column suddenly turned into 1257 points, Lu Sheng jumped up from the bed like a rocket. Lu Sheng couldn't believe his eyes. My mood on this day went from great joy to great sadness to super joy, just like riding a roller coaster. With a score of 1257, he can buy a house in the outer ring of Zhonglin City. Lu Sheng couldn't restrain her excitement for a while, so she quickly opened the house search website and searched for nearby houses. At this moment, the chat window suddenly popped up. It was a message from Zhang Yu. Lu Sheng was surprised. Zhang Yu would not contact his master for 800 years. Why did he suddenly send a message to himself? He then clicked on the message window and saw that it read: My dad had an accident. In the emergency room of the First People's Hospital, the doctor said he was almost dead. Chapter 71. Uncle entered the emergency room. Lu Sheng was shocked. In this world, the only one who treats the original owner well is this uncle. Why did he suddenly enter the emergency room? Lu Sheng quickly asked the reason in the chat box, but Zhang Yu did not reply to the message. If someone else fell ill, Lu Sheng would not be so anxious. After all, I have also traveled through time, and I am not related to the people here. But my uncle fell ill and I had to go see him as soon as possible. If it weren't for his uncle, the original owner might have disappeared from this world long ago. It was now 5 o'clock in the evening. Lu Sheng hurriedly went downstairs to take a taxi and rushed to Zhonglan First People's Hospital. When he arrived, he found that there were a lot of people in front of the emergency room today. Many family members were pacing back and forth, and the doctors were very busy. Rush out and rush in again. Auntie and Zhang Yu were waiting at the door of the emergency room. Even my cousin Zhang Chao, who hadn't been seen for a long time, also came. Zhang Chao is the eldest son of his uncle and aunt. Since getting married, he and his wife have moved out. I seldom come back, and only go home to see the two elders during the holidays. In the words of the aunt, this is because the child is promising. He is usually busy with work, so it doesn't matter if he doesn't come back. It's better than staying at home and playing on the computer all day. Zhang Chao glanced at Lu Sheng, who was rushing over, but did not say hello to him. He sat on the bench quietly with his head lowered. Lu Sheng walked up to his aunt and asked hurriedly, "Auntie, what happened to Uncle? Why did he suddenly enter the emergency room?" Auntie sighed through her nostrils. "It's not their broken pharmaceutical factory. Chemicals leaked and several workers were poisoned. The doctor said the poison this time is very severe, and it's hard to say whether he can be rescued." At this moment, the door of the emergency room was suddenly pushed open, and the attending doctor came out. All the family members waiting anxiously in front of the emergency room gathered around and said in a hurry, "Doctor, how is my guy doing? Please be sure to save him. No matter how much money we have, we are willing to spend it." The attending doctor waved his hand to everyone, signaling everyone to be quiet. Then he said in a deep voice, "The disease this time is indeed a bit difficult. All the cells in the patient's body suddenly died in large numbers. The skin turned black, the muscles atrophied, and the whole person withered quickly like a flower. What's more important is that we have never seen such a case and can't find the cause, so it will be very difficult to prescribe the right medicine." Many family members burst into tears after hearing the attending doctor's words. Someone with more sense hurriedly asked, "Then doctor, is there any other way to save me?" The attending physician replied, "There is currently an emergency method, which is to give the patient an injection of human blood stem cells. This can temporarily save life, but it cannot guarantee a cure. Moreover, this injection is very expensive, costing 700,000 yuan." As soon as they heard that there was medicine that could save their lives, many family members breathed a sigh of relief. But when they heard that a shot cost 700,000 yuan, many people suddenly frowned. For those of them who have less than 500 points and can only earn some hard-earned money every day, 700,000 is already an astronomical figure. The attending physician understands everyone's difficulties, but there is nothing he can do about it. If you want to fight, you need to decide within 30 minutes. Otherwise, after the rescue window period, it will be useless to fight again. As soon as the attending physician finished speaking, some people from fairly good families quickly shouted, "Fight, fight, fight, our family wants a fight, where can we pay?" The nurse on the side showed them the payment code. When my aunt heard that it cost 700,000 per injection, she was stunned. The family only had less than 200,000 yuan in savings, and they originally planned to use it for Zhang Yu's education. Zhang Chao glanced at his aunt and asked carefully, "Mom, should we still beat Dad?" Auntie immediately rolled her eyes at Zhang Chao. "I'll fight, I'll definitely fight. If I don't fight, if people spread the word and gossip, how can I raise my head in front of my little sisters in the future?" But Mom only has 200,000 in savings now. She originally wanted to use it for Yueyu's education. You should hurry up and call your significant other to collect the remaining 500,000. Zhang Chao's face turned pale when he heard that he had to spend so much money. He glanced at Zhang Yu and said, "Isn't your significant other a member of the guild? They have a lot of money, so you can ask your significant other to give away our father's money." When Zhang Yu heard this, he immediately became furious. No matter how much money he has, it won't come from the strong wind. Dad worked hard to raise you, and now you're sick. Don't you plan to pay any money? Besides, don't you brag every day that your wife is the sales ace of the real estate company? You can't have no savings at home. Zhang Chao's face turned blue and purple, and he whispered in his mouth, My wife usually manages money very strictly. She has invested all her money and can't withdraw it for a while. The brother and sister shirk each other, acting like no one wants to pay. Auntie suddenly opened her mouth and cursed. You two white-eyed wolves, are you planning to die without saving me? Auntie's voice was loud and immediately attracted the attention of many people. Zhang Chao was thin-skinned and shrank his head. Mom, we didn't mean that. I'm going to make a call right now. After saying that, he reluctantly walked out of the emergency room and asked his wife for money. Zhang Yu went in another direction, probably contacting Li Shuao. Uncle Li, who lives across the street from his uncle, was also poisoned this time and was sent to the emergency room. Aunt Li's family quickly collected enough money and made the payment. She usually doesn't get along with her aunt, and she hates that her aunt always likes to show off how powerful her son's family is in front of others, and her daughter's other half is a core member of the guild. Now I took advantage of the opportunity and laughed at my aunt. Oh, Zhao Wan, aren't your sons and daughters very powerful? Why is it that my father is ill and can't get a penny out? If you ask me, this kind of child is just for nothing, no matter how powerful it is, what's the use? Auntie's face suddenly dropped. Look carefully, they were just talking nonsense, and they will definitely be able to come up with 700,000 or 800,000 yuan in a while. Aunt Li clicked her tongue twice, looking like she was watching the fun. Auntie felt aggrieved at this time, and her anger had nowhere to vent. At this time, he saw Lu Sheng sitting aside, and then he yelled. And you, why are you looking at the excitement? Your uncle has raised you so much, can you give a penny? Chow Chow, you and the others still have their other half to borrow money from. What about you? You also want to borrow money from your significant other. Does it have nothing to do with you whether your uncle lives or lives? I know it's useless to stay at home all day long, but I still have the nerve to watch other people's jokes. I don't know if the last sentence was meant for Lu Sheng or Aunt Li. Lu Sheng currently has more than 12 million in deposits. 700,000 is not an unbearable number for him. He had already thought about it. If his aunt's family couldn't raise enough money, he would pay for it. My uncle has raised me for 18 years, and I must repay this kindness. As for his aunt swearing, Lu Sheng didn't bother to reply. After all, if you compete with a shrew in scolding, how can you win against a shrew? 10 minutes later, Zhang Chaoxing hurried back. Mom, my wife promised to pay for our father's medical treatment. Auntie immediately glanced at Aunt Li with an expression of, what did I say? He asked hurriedly. It's better for my daughter-in-law. How much money does she plan to spend? She plans to take 50,000. As soon as Zhang Chao finished speaking, Aunt Li couldn't help but laugh. The aunt immediately lost her composure, pointed at Zhang Chao's nose and cursed. Your father is short of 500,000 yuan in treatment, so she is willing to pay 50,000 yuan. If her father died, would she only be able to provide this little money? Zhang Chao's face turned ugly at this time. Mom, why are you talking? We just recently bought a house, a car, and our children need to go to school. We really can't afford that much money in a short while. You can't let us borrow loan sharks. Auntie's eyes twitched. Then you can just sell the car, right? The car is more important than your dad. The two quarreled in the corridor in front of the emergency room. At this time, Zhang Yu came back with a proud look on his face, glanced at Zhang Chao, looked at his aunt and said, Mom, please stop arguing. Shuao promised to pay for Dad's medical treatment. Auntie took a deep breath. Isn't he also planning to get 50,000? Zhang Yu smiled disdainfully. How could Shuao do such a thing? He promised 500,000 and paid the rest. Auntie immediately beamed with joy, glanced at Auntie Li with a proud expression, and then said, Shu Hao is still filial, but the members of his guild are just different. Zhang Chao wasn't angry either. Hearing that Li Shuao was willing to pay 500,000, he breathed a sigh of relief. Mom, if Li Shuao pays for all the rest of Dad's medicine, I won't have to take the 50,000 yuan. Auntie immediately slapped Zhang Chao on the scalp. You're so heartless, doesn't your dad spend money when he's hospitalized? Doesn't your mother spend money? You just got 50,000 yuan, and you still want to take it back. Zhang Chao was unhappy, but considering that he was indeed in the wrong, he didn't say anything. Auntie said quickly, Well Yuyu, if the money arrives, let's hurry up and pay for Dad's medicine, so as not to delay the treatment time. Zhang Yu said, and then said, but Mom, I have to tell you something clearly in advance. Li Shuao said that the 500,000 yuan cannot be borrowed in vain, and the house we live in must be used as a mortgage. Auntie suddenly opened her eyes. Didn't he give your father money for medical treatment? Zhang Chao on the side suddenly stood up from his chair. I disagree. I wonder how that Li Shuao can be so kind. The house we live in now is worth at least 2 or 3 million. If he wants to get 500,000, he can just mortgage it and leave. No way. Zhang Yu glared at Zhang Chao. The house will be mortgaged to you, and you will pay 500,000 for Dad's medical treatment. Zhang Chao replied angrily, sooner or later this house will be mine, why should I pay 500,000? All right, Auntie shouted, mortgage is mortgage, save your father's life first. After speaking, he glared at Zhang Chao. What does it mean that the house will be yours sooner or later? Do you believe it or not? I will do a notarization and transfer the house to someone else. Zhang Chao stopped talking and sat down on the bench glumly. Auntie and Zhang Yu went to the payment center and paid 700,000 yuan. Lu Sheng looked at the family of 3 quarreling in front of the emergency room and secretly shook his head. The kind of mother you really are, the kind of children you raise. Considering the aunt's usually powerful and mean demeanor, it is not surprising at all to have children like Zhang Chao and Zhang Yu. Perhaps noticing the disdain on Lu Sheng's face, Zhang Chao spoke to Lu Sheng for the first time tonight. Why are you MLGB watching the fun? Are you paying for it? You are a loser. Lu Sheng frowned slightly. What if I pay for it? Zhang Chao was slightly stunned. He didn't expect that the useless otaku would dare to reply, so he sighed. If you can pay me, I will kneel down and call you grandpa. Lu Sheng chuckled. Then you better remember what you said. Different from the past when Lu Sheng was forgotten after scolding him, Zhang Chao felt an inexplicable chill this time. This was the first time in his life that he felt that what that good-for-nothing said was a bit worrying. But then he shook his head. A dog can't change its habit of eating shit, so what can a loser do? After a while, Aunt and Zhang Yu came back. In the emergency room, my uncle was also given an injection of human blood stem cells. Since all the cells in my uncle's body were reborn, his symptoms of darkened skin and withered muscles were immediately improved. Half an hour later, the uncle was pushed out of the emergency room and transferred to the ordinary ward for observation. Early the next morning, my uncle woke up from his sleep. Looking at his aunt and Zhang Chao, Zhang Yu, and Lu Sheng who were accompanying him, he lamented that raising these children was not in vain. Zhang Chao and Zhang Yu's faces suddenly turned red. At this time, the attending physician came in, completed a routine check of uncle's various indicators, and then said, the current indicator situation is still good and will get better soon. Family members, come to my office. I have several inspection reports that I need to give you. After hearing this, the uncle immediately understood the meaning of the doctor's words and called out to the doctor. Doctor, if you have anything to say, just say it here. I also want to know more about my disease. The attending doctor glanced at his uncle and then returned to the bedside. I originally said this to my family, but if you want to know more, I won't hide it from you. This disease is very strange. Cells all over the body will gradually die inexplicably, just like a flower withering, so it is temporarily named blight disease. Currently existing diagnosis and treatment can only replenish dead cells by injecting human blood stem cells and regenerating cells throughout the body. But there is a problem. We found that newly generated cells will also die quickly within a day, which means. When the attending doctor said this, he subconsciously stopped. What does it mean? The attending doctor sighed. It means that before we find a complete cure, if you want to survive, you have to take an injection of human blood stem cells every day, which is almost 700,000 a day. After the attending doctor finished speaking, the uncle's family was stunned. 700,000 per day, and we don't know how long it will take to cure the disease. This is undoubtedly a bottomless black hole. What should we do? The uncle's face turned pale for a moment, staring at the ceiling of the ward in despair. Lu Sheng suddenly thought of the random recovery peach in his item list, so he asked, Doctor, can uncle eat peaches in this condition? Before the doctor could speak, my aunt had already scolded. You little fool has no other skills, but a lot of blind ideas. With your uncle like this, eating peaches is of no use. Do you want to kill him? Lu Sheng was originally not sure whether there were any peaches that could be restored to health among the peaches he had left. After hearing what my aunt said, I gave up. Lest you fail to be a good person and end up with a bad name. The uncle patted Lu Sheng's arm weakly. Xiaolu also means well, why are you scolding him? Then he seemed to have figured it out and said to everyone. I just thought about it. Spending so much money just to extend my life for a few days is really not worth it. I have decided that I will not be cured, let nature take its course, and your burden will be lighter. The uncle's words made the aunt and others feel relieved. Yesterday's 700,000 almost made everyone tear up. If it were 700,000 a day, it's hard to imagine what this family might become like. The uncle reluctantly sat up, looked at Zhang Chao and the others and said, Dad just has one last request. I don't know if you can do it. Zhang Chao said hurriedly, Dad, just say it, we will find a way. The uncle nodded happily. Dad still has some things to explain, and I haven't seen my precious grandson yet. Can you give me another injection, so that I can live one more day, and I can take care of all these things, and I won't worry about it anymore. When Zhang Chao heard his father's request for another injection, his face immediately became a little embarrassed. Dad, your precious grandson is already on his way to see you. Do you want another injection? Zhang Chao quickly looked at Zhang Yu. Our house is worth at least 2 or 3 million. You only borrowed 500,000 as a mortgage to Li Shuao. You asked him to provide another 700,000. Seeing his uncle's expression change slightly, Lu Sheng finally couldn't help but interrupt. Okay, stop talking. He really didn't want his uncle to hear such terrible things again. When Zhang Chao saw that it was Lu Sheng who yelled at him, he suddenly became furious. You useless loser who doesn't pay a penny, why are you pretending to be enthusiastic here? The aunt also helped her son and scolded. As an outsider, don't interfere in our family affairs. Lu Sheng ignored his aunt, but looked at Zhang Chao and said, I'll provide the money, but you have to do what you just said. Zhang Chao felt regretful in his heart, but he could not give in at this moment, so he straightened his back and sneered. I, Zhang Chao, keep my word. If you can pay 700,000, I will get down on the ground and call you grandpa. The uncle's face darkened and he was about to scold Zhang Chao, but was stopped by Lu Sheng. He looked up at the gray-white title on his uncle's head. A middle-aged man who is very eager to live. With a slight pain in my heart, I said, Uncle, you have raised me for 18 years, and I plan to raise you for a few more days. Although it is far less than the kindness of 18 years, it is always my heart. After finishing speaking, he turned to the chief doctor and said in front of his aunt, Zhang Chao, and Zhang Yu, Doctor, I want my uncle to live. I'll pay for a week's worth of medicine first, 4.9 million. The uncle was immediately startled. Xiaolu, where did you get so much money? Auntie sneered at the side. Do you think this is playing a game? Just open your mouth to brag. Lu Sheng patted his uncle's hand. I borrowed it from my significant other. Uncle, you can just rest assured and recuperate in the hospital. After speaking, he looked at the nurse and asked, Give me a payment code. The nurse was a little surprised and showed Lu Sheng the payment code. Among the many bed patients on the ward round today, this was the only one who had to spend money to survive. Lu Sheng transferred 4.9 million in full view of everyone. I will transfer the money for a week first, and if I haven't found a cure, I will continue to pay. The attending physician glanced at the notice of receipt of the payment and nodded in surprise. Okay, let's come back after that so we don't disturb the patient's rest. After that, he left his uncle's ward with a group of doctors and nurses. At this moment, uncle, aunt, Zhang Chao and others were all shocked from ear to ear. Zhang Yu suddenly had some different emotions in his eyes when he looked at Lu Sheng. My aunt, who originally planned to watch the fun, became stammering when she saw that Lu Sheng's transfer was successful. You really have so much money. Lu Sheng did not respond to his aunt, but looked at Zhang Chao. What you promised me just now should come true. Zhang Chao's face suddenly turned the color of pig liver. He looked at his aunt, then at Zhang Yu, and suddenly said, It's not fair, why am I the only one calling you grandpa, and why should I call you Zhang Yu too? Zhang Yu's face immediately turned cold. Zhang Chao, you shameless person, don't drag me with you. Lu Sheng said calmly, I don't want you to call me grandpa either. It sounds like I'm taking advantage of my uncle. Just let me slap you in the face and cure your bad mouth. Auntie was a little anxious. Xiao Lu, let's forget it's all from our own family. Zhang Chao saw Lu Sheng's eyes were very firm and knew that he might not be able to escape today. It was much easier to accept being slapped than kneeling down and calling him grandpa. Besides, how could he not know how much strength this fat man had in his hands? I had beaten him frequently since I was a child, and he was as strong as a mosquito scratching him when he retaliated. So he said, okay, just a slap, a real man, willing to admit defeat. Lu Sheng smiled coldly and reluctantly gave himself the title of a fat man proficient in fighting. He slapped Zhang Chao accurately and quickly across the face. Zhang Chao flew out with a bang. Blood flowed from his nose, his mouth felt salty, and he spat on the ground. The blood on the ground was mixed with 2 front teeth. Auntie suddenly felt distressed and cried loudly. We are all brothers. How can we be so cruel? Lu Sheng said nonchalantly. Aunt, please take Zhang Chao and the others out for a while. I want to chat with uncle for a while. The slap Lu Sheng gave just now obviously frightened his aunt and Zhang Chao. Not daring to stay at all, he quickly left the ward. Zhang Yu leaned closer to Lu Sheng intentionally or unintentionally, and the title on his head changed too. A schoolgirl who wants to please Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng glared at her fiercely, and Zhang Yu felt bored and left. Now only Lu Sheng and his uncle are left in the ward. Sorry, I just hit your son. The uncle laughed after hearing this. That boy needs to be disciplined and disciplined. Xiao Lu, your personality and temper are becoming more and more like your father. People have lost weight recently, and they look more and more like each other. Lu Sheng smiled slightly and turned to ask, Uncle, I actually want to ask you here, how did you suddenly get this strange disease? The uncle rested his head on the pillow and sighed. Hey, yesterday morning, several of our workers were still adding condensate to a certain medicine as before. Uncle Li, who lives across the street from our house, accidentally spilled one of the cans of condensate, so we quickly wiped it with a rag. Logically speaking, the refrigerant is not poisonous, and it is not that it has not been wiped before, but this time, it broke as soon as it was wiped. I saw that my whole hand turned black with just a brush, and then the skin on my hands quickly withered away. It's just like on TV, when the soul is suddenly sucked away by an evil spirit. When Lu Sheng heard the sentence, soul was sucked away, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. Inexplicably, I thought of the Bana lotus that fell into the lower world. He still remembered the prop description of this item. Picking lotuses on the other side, your soul will be reborn. The stone tablet at that time also said, if you pick the afterlife flower, the lotus will fall to the lower world and bring bad consequences to the lower world. But that was clearly something in the dungeon, how could it appear in the real world? It must be a coincidence. Lu Sheng said goodbye to his uncle, got up and left the ward. The aunt's family of 3 were still standing at the door of the ward. When they saw Lu Sheng coming out, they did not dare to go up and speak. Lu Sheng ignored his aunt and others and walked toward the elevator. At this moment, he suddenly saw 2 middle-aged men wearing public security department uniforms walking towards him. Is your name Lu Sheng? Lu Sheng nodded. Please come with us and cooperate with us in a simple investigation. Lu Sheng had no idea why people from the public security department came to find him. At this moment, I was confused and anxious, but I couldn't refuse, so I had no choice but to nod. 2 officers from the public security department led the way. Lu Sheng followed them obediently. Not far away, I heard my aunt and Zhang Chao whispering behind me. I just said how could he suddenly be so rich? It seems that he did something illegal and criminal. He is still so arrogant with dirty money. He deserves to be caught and sentenced to at least several decades. Lu Sheng sighed. The most embarrassing thing for some people in this life is that the people around them live better than themselves. 2 officers from the public security department took Lu Sheng to a consulting room in the hospital. Go in, someone is waiting for you inside. Lu Sheng gently pushed open the door of the consultation room. I saw 2 people sitting inside. Wearing casual clothes, he doesn't look like someone from the sheriff's department. One of them is an old man with gray hair, probably around 70 years old. The other one is a very beautiful young girl, wearing a JK uniform, leaning casually on the diagnosis and treatment table. The moment the old man saw Lu Sheng come in, he smiled and nodded at him. Pointing to a chair opposite, he said, "Sit down, I didn't scare you. I am Yu Wenshan, the vice president in charge of handling special events from the Research Institute. This is my granddaughter, her name is Yu Huayan. I called you here today to ask you a few questions. You have downloaded a copy of Far From Home before, right? Were you in Area 104 at that time?" Lu Sheng didn't understand why the old man suddenly mentioned Area 104, but he nodded honestly. "I'm in Area 104. Yu Wenshan was not surprised at all. "Then in the dungeon, Far From Home, have you opened its hidden mission, Yaolin Fantasy?" Lu Sheng pretended to be confused and looked at Yu Wenshan. All first passes and first kills in the game will anonymize player names to ensure player safety. Therefore, Lu Sheng will not easily reveal that he has completed the hidden mission before confirming the other party's intention. When Yu Wenshan saw that Lu Sheng was silent, he gestured to his granddaughter Yu Huayan on the side. "Yanzi, explain to this kid why we came to him." Yu Huayan, a girl wearing a JK uniform, turned to look at Lu Sheng and smiled softly. "The reason why we are concerned about the situation in the hidden mission, Yaolin Illusion, is that we suspect that he is related to the recent blight disease. In fact, it's not just Zhonglin City where patients with blight disease have appeared. Similar situations have also appeared in Luhai City and Shancheng City a few days ago. We suspect it is related to the game pollution in the dungeon, so we want to find players who have entered Yaolin Fantasy Land to learn about the details of the fantasy realm." Lu Sheng's heart skipped a beat when he heard the word, game pollution. "Just when I thought of this possibility, people from the Research Association came to my door. Isn't it a coincidence?" So he shook his head cautiously. "I have never been to Yaolin's Illusion. You have found the wrong person." Yu Huayan's beautiful peach blossom eyes stared unblinkingly at Lu Sheng's eyes. "During this period, we have visited many players in Area 104 one after another. One player named Liho mentioned that he and the other two players were not seen in the last 2 hours. Where did you go at that time?" Lu Sheng said calmly. "We were in a cave at the other end of the mountain. We were worried that the criminals would launch a crazy counterattack in the last 2 hours, so after discussion, we did not return to the original cave. The final result also proved that the cave was not discovered by the criminals. We were lucky to survive until the end. I can tell you the location of the cave." Yu Huayan found that Lu Sheng's eyes did not flicker from beginning to end, and it did not look like he was lying. So he sighed and asked again, "Then do you know where Zhu Jojo is? I checked all the information and can't find this person. Do you still have contact with him?" Regarding Zhu Jojo, Lu Sheng had no news about him at all. "I had no choice but to answer truthfully. At the end of the game, I originally wanted his contact information, but I missed it by a second. I haven't heard from him since then." Disappointment obviously flashed across Yu Huayan's eyes. He pouted in frustration. "What? I originally thought I would get something big this time, but in the end I still didn't ask anything." Yu Wenshan was very calm. He looked at Lu Sheng silently for a while, then suddenly asked, "Kid, do you know what happened at Black Dragon Mountain 2 years ago?" Lu Sheng only traveled through time half a month ago, so naturally he had no way of knowing what happened 2 years ago. He shook his head and saw Yu Wenshan looking as expected, nodding slightly. "It's normal not to know. After all, the Black Dragon Mountain dungeon is now a forbidden word." He turned to look at Yu Huayan again. "Yanzi, tell him the story of Black Dragon Mountain again." Yu Huayan raised his eyebrows in surprise, and then seemed to understand the meaning of his grandfather's words. So he also moved a chair and sat opposite Lu Sheng. He put his hands on the ends of his skirt and said, "Black Dragon Mountain was the first dungeon in the Dragon Slaying series 2 years ago. It was also the first dungeon with a difficulty rating of S at that time. However, although the Black Dragon Mountain dungeon is very difficult, it is still a normal dungeon. There were many guilds who chose to challenge it back then. But until one day, a group of guild members opened his hidden mission through some unknown method, and the entire dungeon suddenly changed drastically. To be precise, it's contaminated. Yu Huayan leaned forward slightly. From then on, regardless of whether they have cleared the level or not, players who come out of it will gradually suffer from various strange diseases within half a year. Some people's bodies will rot as soon as they eat meat, some people's skin will be burned when they come into contact with the sun, and some can only live in a sterile room. Whenever they breathe a little bit of air with impurities, their throats and lungs will be destroyed. Festering for no reason. Medical research has simply found the cause, as if these problems do not belong to the medical system of this world at all. Later, the Research Association also sent people into the dungeon, trying to reproduce the hidden mission so that they could find the problem. But not only could they not find it, but everyone who entered the investigation was also infected with this strange disease. What's even more frightening is that this disease is still contagious. It was only then that the Research Association realized that the germs in the dungeon can also contaminate the real world, and the cause is unknown and cannot be cured. For ordinary people, it is undoubtedly a huge disaster. Lu Sheng frowned secretly as he listened to Yu Huayan's story. Then he asked, what happened next? This time it was Yu Wenshan who spoke. We had no choice but to seal off the communities where all the patients lived and let them fend for themselves. At the same time, the copy was banned at the social level. This included blocking all related videos, clearance strategies, and discussion posts. Even the words, Black Dragon Mountain, were blocked. It lasted for more than half a year before this incident was finally over. Lu Sheng was surprised. He didn't expect that the Research Association's handling method was so simple and crude, and he quickly asked, will the community where the patient lives be sealed off this time as well? Yu Wenshan shook his head. We have found no signs of human-to-human transmission of blight this time, so we will not impose a lockdown for the time being. Lu Sheng breathed a sigh of relief and heard Yu Wenshan continue. But this time the blight disease has many similarities with the last strange disease in Black Dragon Mountain. For example, it also came on suddenly and the cause could not be found, so we suspect that it may also be related to game contamination. After Yu Wenshan finished speaking, he looked up at Lu Sheng again. So kid, are you sure you haven't entered the hidden missions of Yao Lin's fantasy land? Lu Sheng's ambition has long been different from the original owner's 18-year-old romantic boy. His business experience before time travel made him develop the habit of being cautious and not easily trusting strangers and organizations. He trusts his own judgment more. The stories told by Yu Wenshan made it difficult for him to judge whether they were true or false. What's more, the real situation in Yaolin's fantasy is not that complicated. Whether you say it or not, it will not affect the current rescue operation, but will expose your identity information. So Lu Sheng calmly shook his head. Yu Wenshan nodded slightly in disappointment. If you have any clues later on who it is, be sure to contact us. Yu Huayan then stood up from his chair, took out a business card from his skirt and handed it over. This is my business card. If you have any new clues, you can contact me at any time. I will not turn off my phone 24 hours a day. Lu Sheng took the business card, placed it carefully, stood up and said goodbye. When he was about to open the door, he suddenly turned around and asked again. Then the copy of Black Dragon Mountain has always been blocked. Yu Wenshan shook his head. When you reach 50,000 points on the ladder, you can awaken your first profession. Our current plan is to wait until someone awakens their profession and then go in to find out. Maybe by then, we will have the answer. After all, we don't want the mystery to remain just like this. Lu Sheng said goodbye to Yu Wenshan and Yu Huayan again, opened the door and walked out. In the corridor of the hospital, he suddenly met his angry aunt and his family of 3. Auntie, along with Zhang Chao and Zhang Yu, stared at him with unkind expressions. Zhang Chao's nose was still stuffed with tissue, but his eyes seemed to be on fire. It was Auntie who spoke first. I knew how you could suddenly have so much extra money. You did something illegal and criminal. I'm telling you, starting from today, you are not allowed to appear in our house again, so as not to drag us down. Do you understand? Lu Sheng was stunned at first, and then he probably understood. It was probably that the mother and son saw the public security department looking for him and quickly wanted to distance themselves from him. He originally wanted to explain a few words, but after thinking about it, it might be useless to explain to these 3 people. Anyway, I had planned to move out, so I could just take this opportunity to break off the relationship with my aunt and others, which would not be a good thing. So instead of struggling to explain, it's better to turn around and leave. Okay, I'll move out tonight after I get my things. The aunt thought that according to Lu Sheng's original character, she would have to plead a few words, but she didn't expect that this kid seemed to be a completely different person now. She was so angry that she jumped behind Lu Sheng. Hey, you, what's your attitude? But Lu Sheng's slap just now left her with lingering fears, so she didn't dare to say anything sarcastic, and just watched Lu Sheng walk away blankly. At 9 o'clock in the evening, the night is as cold as water. Lu Sheng returned to the small room where he had lived for 18 years. Everything in the room has always been very simple, and now there is no bed. Lu Sheng didn't have anything to organize. He came today just to take away the yin-yang fish that his father gave him. When he opened the lid of the yin-yang fish, his handsome father was still smiling at him. Lu Sheng chuckled and stuffed the yin-yang fish into his pocket. He put on his backpack and left his uncle's house without looking back. It can be regarded as saying goodbye to the original owner's youth, and the rest of his life as his own. Half an hour later, Lu Sheng returned to Lao Yang's home again. The first thing I did when I got home was to open the virtual imaging computer and log into the player forum. Today's player forum is still very deserted, with few posts. But Lu Sheng is not here to browse the posts today, he is here to find information about Hailongshan. 1000 points can open the search function. He quickly entered the words Black Dragon Mountain into the search bar. However, the search results came up blank. It seemed that Yu Wenshan was right, they had indeed blocked all relevant information. At this time, Lu Sheng suddenly remembered something again. The strange disease in Hailongshan mentioned by Yu Wenshan in the clinic today seems to be very similar to Lao Yang's curse. But Lao Yang's symptoms were much milder than theirs. Could it be that Lao Yang knew something? Lu Sheng quickly opened the chat box and sent a message to Lao Yang. Lao Yang, are you asleep? Soon I received a reply from Lao Yang. Not yet. Little Heavenly Master doesn't want women at this time, so why does he think of me, an old man? Sure enough, it is still the same Lao Yang style as always. But soon I received another voice message from him. Oh, I almost forgot about this week's weekly assignment. Lu Sheng ignored Lao Yang's self-question and answer and asked instead. Lao Yang, I have been thinking about your problem during the day. Tell me, how did you get this strange disease? This time Lao Yang spoke for a long time. Oh, Lao Yang was really touched that the little heavenly master was so concerned about Lao Yang's problem. He didn't dare to hide it from the little heavenly master. I got this problem 2 years ago when I downloaded the dungeon. From then on, it was really painful and I couldn't eat meat. I can't smell car exhaust, and recently I won't even let women touch me, my Aunt May, Aunt Lu, they. Lu Sheng's heart skipped a beat when he heard the sentence from the copy he downloaded 2 years ago. Which copy is it? Lao Yang said vaguely. It's just a copy anyway. Does it have anything to do with curing a disease? Seeing that Lao Yang refused to say anything, Lu Sheng asked tentatively. Is it Black Dragon Mountain? Lao Yang was obviously taken aback, and then immediately sent a message. Hey, little heavenly master, don't mention this word again, otherwise you will be investigated by the people from the Research Association. It's too late today. Let's not talk about it. Let's talk about it another day. Lu Sheng thought to himself, it seems that Lao Yang really knows something. But he didn't want to say it today, so he had to ask another day. So he replied, then let's talk another day. By the way, I brought you something good this time. It may be able to cure your disease. I'll give it to you to try when you come back next week. Lao Yang on the other side of the call column immediately beamed. Oh, okay, little heavenly master is the most reliable. Lu Sheng closed the virtual chat box with Lao Yang and stared out the window in a daze. Black Dragon Mountain, Blight Disease, Game Pollution, Yalan Illusion, Lotus of the Other Side. He was suddenly exposed to too much information this night, which made him feel a little overwhelmed. He took the business card out of his arms and held it in his hand. Agent of the Special Incident Handling Department of the Global Game Research Association, Yu Huayan. Lu Sheng looked at it repeatedly and finally stuffed it into his bag. At the same time, in a high-end residence in Zhonglin City, Yu Huayan put down the phone and shouted to Yu Wenshan. Grandpa, I received a call from a colleague at the headquarters, saying that a young man named Lu Sheng has been detected. He has just logged into the player forum to search for information about Black Dragon Mountain. I'm afraid the average player won't be so concerned. Yu Wenshin took a sip of foreign wine and said unhurriedly. Not necessarily. After all, this blight is related to his uncle. But you'd better find another chance to get in touch with him again. Early the next morning, Lu Sheng opened the house hunting website and continued the house hunting business that had been interrupted. I can't go back to my uncle's house, and I can't always live in Lao Yang's house. While I still have more than 1,000 points, hurry up and buy a house. He has already figured out where to buy his dream house. I bought it in this Lulan community. This is his blessed place. The environment is good and there are few people. The security guard is in charge, and you can also look through the trash cans from time to time, there may be surprises. Lu Sheng quickly made appointments for 9 houses, all of which were in Lulan community. All the houses in this world have password locks. Therefore, if Lu Sheng wants to view a house, he only needs to select the house he likes and the time he wants to view the house, and the house viewing website will automatically send him the password for the door. After getting the password, Lu Sheng hurriedly ran out of the door. Since they are in the same community, it only took more than 40 minutes to view all 9 houses. 2 of the houses made him very satisfied. One set is smaller, about 80 square meters, with 2 bedrooms and 1 living room, and is very warmly decorated. The price is not expensive either, just over 2.4 million. The other set is a large flat floor with an area of more than 200 square meters. Located on the top floor of the community, the view from the room is particularly good. The original owner of the house was probably a sophisticated white-collar woman, and the decoration style of the house was a very elegant light luxury style. It's just that the total price is a little more expensive, more than 6 million. Lu Sheng now has 7.3 million left, so there is no problem in buying a large flat. However, he weighed it up. His uncle will have to spend money on medical treatment in the future, so he still needs to save more. So I bought that small house of more than 80 square meters. It's a bit small, but it's enough to live alone, and it still looks cozy. Lu Sheng quickly submitted a transaction application on the housing search website. After checking his points, the house finding website immediately sent him a complete set of house purchase contracts and related procedures. Including taxes and service fees, the final landing price of the house is around 2.7 million. Lu Sheng paid the money readily, and an 80 square meter house was immediately added to his asset list. It was just 9 o'clock in the morning, and it took Lu Sheng less than 3 hours in total from looking at the house to buying the house. It came faster than when he bought a roll of garbage bags online before traveling through time. After buying the house, Lu Sheng quickly packed up the guest room of Lao Yang's house, and then went out with his backpack and all his belongings. With the scorching sun on his head, he crossed half of the community, said a friendly hello to the good security guard on the way, and arrived at his new house successfully 10 minutes later. Lu Sheng's tedious moving work has come to an end. He took out 10 flat peaches from the equipment slot and placed them on the table. This is the task he set for himself today. If you can't even eat 10 peaches, how can you achieve anything big? By night, Lu Sheng finally had eaten all 10 peaches. This time my luck was not as good as yesterday, and I only got a second prize of 673 points in the end. The 10 peaches add up to a total of 943 points. Now Lu Sheng's total ladder points have reached 2,170 points. Although it was very hard to eat peaches, I couldn't hold on and wanted to give up several times in the middle, but luckily I persisted. Persistence will pay off, and good things will happen if you persist. Lu Sheng silently encouraged himself in his heart. The day passed so happily. The next day is Friday. Lu Sheng got up early as usual and exercised on the super time treadmill. He has eaten too many peaches in the past few days and his sugar intake has exceeded the standard. He needs to consume as many calories as possible. Since the fatigue hard drive was full, Lu Sheng was unable to transfer the excess fatigue to it, so he had to rely on his own will to run as hard as he could. In the end, I ran on the hyperspace treadmill for 5 hours intermittently, and I was already exhausted and panting. Suddenly I heard someone knocking on the door. Lu Sheng couldn't help but feel curious. It was just the first day that I moved in, why would someone come to visit me? So he wiped the sweat from his body, came to the door and opened it. But when he opened the door, Lu Sheng was immediately dumbfounded. Because there are two enemies standing outside the door. Chu Changge and Xia Shui. Xia Shui was stunned for a moment when she saw Lu Sheng. She still remembered that this boy was the player who said he cheated in the first copy. Just when he was embarrassed and didn't know what to say, he saw Chu Changge punching him with his fist. Lu Sheng was caught off guard and was beaten. Dang dang dang, took 3 steps back and fell on the sofa. However, Chu Changge didn't seem to understand his hatred and pounced on him, wanting to continue fighting. Lu Sheng has not changed his title at this time and is not Chu Changge's opponent yet. In desperation, he grabbed the fatigue hard drive on the table and threw it at it. The fatigue hard drive pressed against Chu Changge's lower abdomen, immediately releasing half an hour of fatigue from his body. Chu Changge suddenly felt a strong sense of fatigue coming over him, so he moved a chair and sat down. Xia Shui, who was still standing outside the door at this time, thought that Chu Changge suddenly attacked Lu Sheng because of his own affairs. I can't help but feel a little confused. Isn't my captain always very mature and steady? At this time, I heard Chu Changge gasping and saying, "You are a shameless undercover, liar, and traitor." This long list of nouns in Chu Changge's mouth finally made Xia Shui wake up. So he is the undercover agent you said was the one who deceived you. Chu Changge snorted and turned his face away. Xia Shui hurriedly walked to Lu Sheng, apologized with a smile. Sorry, it was our problem just now. We shouldn't hit people." Lu Sheng covered his face with his hands and said angrily, "Everything in the dungeon depends on one's ability. If you lose, you lose. There's no reason to come out and beat me up again. Yes, it's all our fault. I can't apologize to you." Xia Shui was careful as she sat down. Lu Sheng glanced at Chu Changge, who was bulging and panting, and had a thought in his mind. While pretending to sigh, he quietly put the fatigue hard drive close to Chu Changge's feet, and secretly transmitted when he was tired. "Forget it, why are you looking for me today?" Xia Shui quickly took out a promotional page from her bag and handed it to Lu Sheng. "We are here this time to recruit talents on behalf of the Blue Elephant Guild. We just learned that your ladder points have exceeded 1,000 points, reaching our threshold for new recruits, so we hope you can join our Blue Elephant Guild." Lu Sheng was surprised at first. How do they know how many points they have? Then it dawned on me. Oh, the points information presented must have been leaked when I was buying a house. Salfin website. In the information age, it is true that no matter where you go, you cannot avoid the fate of having your personal information sold. Looking at Xia Shui's sincere eyes, Lu Sheng refused without any hesitation. "I'm sorry, I don't think I'm suitable for the Blue Elephant Guild." Lu Sheng really doesn't like the Blue Elephant Guild, nor does he like Xia Shui and Li Shuao. Xia Shui immediately glanced at Chu Changge complainingly. "I usually bring the captain out to add points to the guild. Who knew that today it would be a drag on me?" Xia Shui still had a professional smile on her face. "If it's because of what happened to Captain Chu just now, please rest assured that Captain Chu is definitely not like this. You may not know the benefits of joining a guild yet. Let me give you a general introduction." In the next 20 minutes, Xia Shui began to talk to Lu Sheng about the benefits of joining the guild. For example, there are wages, equipment, and systematic training to improve personal physical fitness. In addition, members of the guild can play a dungeon together, which can greatly increase the chance of survival in the dungeon. In short, he was talking about it with passion and spitting. If Lu Sheng hadn't wanted to spread more fatigue into Chu Changge's body, he would have interrupted Xia Shui's words. But in the end, no matter how hard Xia Shui tried, Lu Sheng categorically rejected Xia Shui's invitation. He just insisted that he liked someone and didn't want to join the guild yet. Chu Changge, who was completely exhausted, muttered to himself, "It's just a rookie with just over 1,000 points, and he's already showing off. If he doesn't come, he won't come. Blue Elephant has nothing to lose." Xia Shui had no choice but to leave a promotional page. "Tell Lu Sheng that there is a contact number above and you can contact them at any time if you change your mind." Then he stood up politely and said goodbye to Lu Sheng. Chu Changge stood up from the chair with a tired look, put one hand on his waist and complained, Strange, why do you feel sore all over after sitting here for a while? Xia Shui rolled her eyes at him angrily. I guess I got retribution for that punch just now. I deserve it. Lu Sheng was secretly amused. He just glanced at the fatigued hard drive. In just a short time, 24 fatigue hours had been transferred into Chu Chengyi's body. It can be regarded as a revenge to some extent. After seeing the two people off, Lu Sheng stepped onto the hyperspace treadmill again. This time, with the help of the fatigue hard drive, 5 hours passed quickly. Just when he was exercising vigorously, there was a knock on the door again. Lu Sheng was full of doubts. How come anyone knows they live here? He opened the door impatiently and saw Yu Huayan standing outside the door. Yu Huayan wore a short aqua skirt today with 2 buns on her head, looking particularly young and beautiful. But Lu Sheng turned a blind eye and curled his lips helplessly. I told you that I didn't open the hidden mission, so why are you here? Yu Huayan chuckled and walked into the house minding his own business. I'm not here today for this matter, but for other things. What's the matter? Yu Huayan handed a page of paper to Lu Sheng. Well, because you have more than 1,000 points, you need to register in the player file of the Research Association. From now on, I will send you some gifts during the holidays. Lu Sheng once again cursed the unscrupulous website that leaked his information in his heart, and then picked up the pen and filled in the form. While filling in, he asked curiously, "Aren't you from the Special Incident Management Department? Why are you still responsible for this kind of thing?" Yu Huayan shrugged. Normally, this is the responsibility of the players and colleagues from the Guild Archives Department, but since I happened to be nearby this time, I did them a favor. After all, there are not many people with more than 1,000 points. After saying that, Yu Huayan took out a Guild Information Manual and a Guild Application Form and handed them over. In addition, after you exceed 1,000 points, you can also submit a Guild application through the Research Association. This book contains an introduction to all the major guilds currently registered. You can use it as a reference. Driven by curiosity, Lu Sheng opened the Guild Information Manual. Sure enough, I saw the introduction of each guild and the minimum delivery score described in detail above. It's like filling out your application for the college entrance examination before time travel. Lu Sheng noticed that as long as the ladder points exceed 300 points, you can choose a C-level guild. If you score more than 800 points, you can choose a second-level guild. Among them, the admission threshold of the Blue Elephant Guild is 800 points. When I bought a house, my points were more than 1,200 points, which was more than 400 points above the admission threshold, which is considered a very good result. Lu Sheng paid special attention to the application threshold for Class A guilds. The lowest score is 3,000 points. As for the Super Guild, the threshold is 10,000 points, and there is also a special mark. There will be a very strict entrance test to join the guild. Lu Sheng closed the Guild Information Manual and asked Yu Huayan curiously, "What is the difference between submitting an application to you and submitting an application directly to the target guild?" Yu Huayan shrugged. "Strictly speaking, there is no difference. However, after research, we will switch, and the other guild may take it more seriously." "So, how are you? Have you found the guild you like?" Yu Huayan looked at Lu Sheng with a smile, which made him feel a little scared. "I wonder, doesn't this girl have to complete her weekly tasks? If you stare straight at yourself like this, aren't you afraid of exploding on the spot?" Lu Sheng finally rejected Yu Huayan's kindness. "Thank you, but I don't want to join the guild just yet." Yu Huayan put the registration form into his bag without any concern. "It's okay if you don't join a guild. Isn't that Lone Ranger very popular recently? He still shocked the whole world by himself." After saying that, he didn't pause much, stood up decisively and walked out the door. "Okay, my mission for today is completed, so I'll leave first." Lu Sheng didn't expect that Yu Huayan was really here just to register her information, so he stood up and saw her out the door. When closing the door, Yu Huayan said something intentionally or unintentionally. "By the way, tomorrow we plan to go to the pharmaceutical factory where your uncle had an accident to conduct an investigation. Do you want to come with us?" Lu Sheng was slightly startled, thought for a moment, and nodded. Good. He really wanted to know whether the source of the blight disease had anything to do with the Bana lotus. An imperceptible smile appeared on the corner of Yu Huayan's mouth. Then I'll pick you up at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Early the next morning, Yu Huayan appeared at the door of Lu Sheng's house early. Today she changed into a goose yellow princess dress, and even wore matching hair accessories. As soon as Lu Sheng opened the door, the breath of youth hit his face. Yu Huayan smiled brightly. Let's go, Grandpa is waiting for us at the factory. Yu Huayan drove the car and took Lu Sheng to the place where his uncle worked. Zhonglin Third Pharmaceutical Factory. Due to the blight disease, a cordon has been set up around the entire pharmaceutical factory, prohibiting all personnel from entering or exiting. Yu Huayan showed his work badge to a public security bureau officer in front of the cordon and was let in smoothly. In a pharmaceutical factory, a group of workers wearing white protective masks are conducting toxicity screening of preparation raw materials one by one. Yu Wenshan is also there. When he saw Lu Sheng, he smiled and nodded to him. Yu Huayan put his hands in his pockets, stepped forward and asked, Grandpa, how's the investigation going? Yu Wenshan pointed to the hundreds of plastic buckets beside him and said, We have randomly checked dozens of barrels, and no problems have been found so far. Lu Sheng thought that his uncle had told him that he was poisoned while cleaning the condensate, so he asked, Where is the condensate? Yu Wenshan then called the person in charge of the factory, who led everyone to a tall plastic barrel. These are all refrigerants. Lu Sheng then squinted his eyes and looked at the barrels. An unopened bucket of condensate. A bucket of pure condensate. When I glanced at the last corner, I suddenly saw a line of titles above the 3 plastic buckets. A barrel of contaminated condensate. Lu Sheng immediately frowned, pointed to the 3 buckets in the corner and asked, Have these been checked as well? Yu Wenshan then called a staff member wearing protective clothing. The man glanced at Lu Sheng, and then replied calmly, Everything has been checked. Lu Sheng pointed at one of the plastic buckets with his finger. Are you sure there's nothing wrong with this? The staff member showed an unhappy look on his face. We are always rigorous in what we do, and there will be no missed inspections. As he spoke, he asked his assistant to get the test form, pointed to a line in it and showed it to Yu Wenshan. Look, here are the test results. There are no suspicious elements. There is no problem with the composition of the reagent. This is strange. Logically speaking, titles never lie. Lu Sheng thought for a moment, turned around and asked, Do you have a white mouse? Can you use a white mouse to do a vitality test? The staff was a little impatient, but still cooperated and asked the assistant to fetch a white mouse. Then pour part of the condensate into a bucket and throw the white mouse into it. At this time, the white mouse thrown into the bucket struggled hard for a few times, and then suddenly its whole body turned black and its muscles shrank rapidly. The symptoms are exactly the same as blight. Yu Wenshan and the staff were all shocked. It turns out that this toxin cannot be detected with reagents, and can only be detected by living organisms. Yu Wenshan hurriedly turned to the person in charge of the factory and asked, Check quickly, where are these barrels of condensate shipped from? The person in charge of the factory ran out in a hurry, and after a while, he came back panting. It was found out that these barrels of refrigerant were purchased from Chenggalin Pharmaceutical Factory in Shangjing City. Chenggalin Pharmaceutical Factory is a pharmaceutical company under Linsheng Medical Group. The quality of raw materials has always been good and it is our common supplier. Yu Wenshan nodded and turned to look at Lu Sheng and Yu Huayan. We will rush back to Shangjing City now. At 3:45 in the afternoon, Yu Wenshan took Lu Sheng and 3 others to Chenggalin Pharmaceutical Factory in Shangjing City. At this time, the inspectors from the Shangjing Research Association had been waiting at the entrance of the pharmaceutical factory for a long time. When they saw Yu Wenshan and his people arriving, they hurriedly greeted him. Vice President Fish, the factory director won't let us in. Yu Wenshan frowned slightly. Why aren't you allowed in? The factory director said that they are the largest pharmaceutical factory in Shangjing City and will not have this kind of problem. Yu Wenshan patted the inspector on the shoulder and then walked towards the security booth at the main entrance of the factory. At this time, the factory director was still in the security booth. He glanced at Yu Wenshan, who was leading the way, and greeted him calmly. As I just said, our factory is one of the largest and safest pharmaceutical raw material manufacturing factories in Shangjing City. It is also one of the largest pharmaceutical factories under Linsheng Medical Group. You are not just allowed to go in for inspection. Yu Wenshan raised his head and glanced at the heavily guarded Chenggalin pharmaceutical factory. His expression remained unchanged as the director of the factory said, "We found 3 barrels of contaminated condensate at the 3rd pharmaceutical factory in Zhonglin City, which were sent from you. We suspect it is related to the leakage of copies. So I came here this time to confirm whether there is a problem with the refrigerant here." However, the factory director didn't seem to take what Yu Wenshan said to heart at all. He still had an arrogant look that said he was distant from others. "Then you must be overly worried. Our factory is one of the largest pharmaceutical raw material factories in Shangjing City. It has the most advanced raw material production equipment, quality testing equipment, and cold chain transportation equipment. It is the most advanced in the entire Shangjing City and even the Huasha region. One of the reliable suppliers of pharmaceutical raw materials." Yu Wenshan impatiently interrupted the factory director's eloquent and extremely official speech. "I know Lin Sheng, the chairman of your group. Do you want me to call him and ask him to say hello to you?" Hearing that Yu Wenshan was about to call the chairman, the factory director's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly said the next sentence. "You guys wait until I ask the little boss for permission. If he agrees, you can go in." Then he hurried to the side and made a phone call. Yu Huayan put his hands behind his back, crossed his legs, pouted and whispered, "HMPH, because I am part of Lin Sheng Medical's industry, even the Research Association doesn't take it seriously." Yu Wenshan calmly comforted Yu Huayan. "The Research Association is mainly responsible for matters related to the Monde game. It is understandable that these real industries ignore us." This time, after waiting for almost half an hour, the factory director bowed his head and hurried over with a young man. The young man walked up to the 3 of them with a look of indifference on his face. "Sorry, I just had a meeting and kept you waiting for a long time." He said he was embarrassed, but there was no hint of embarrassment on his face. Yu Wenshan was not angry either, and nodded to the young man in an easy-going manner. "It's us who have disturbed you, but we do have official business, so I hope you'll forgive me." The young man's eyes swept over Yu Huayan, ignored Lu Sheng and the others, and finally landed on Yu Wenshan. "My junior's name is Lin Yang. Lin Sheng, the chairman of Lin Sheng Medical Group, is my father. My senior can just call me Xiao Lin." Lin Yang's seemingly casual introduction actually pointed out his identity as the young master very cleverly. Apparently he was telling Lu Sheng and the other 3 that his status was not simple and he was not easy to mess with. Yu Wenshan then once again explained the purpose of his visit. "In order to attract Lin Yang's attention, I specifically mentioned this time that more than 10 people have been infected with blight due to the condensate. If the truth cannot be found out as soon as possible, there may be inestimable consequences." After listening to Yu Wenshan's words, Lin Yang laughed and shook his head. "If seniors want to visit our factory, we welcome them at any time. But the fact that the refrigerant is poisonous must be a misunderstanding. Because our factory has the most sophisticated quality inspection equipment in the entire Shangjing City, every barrel of raw materials leaving the factory must go through 16 layers of quality and security inspections to ensure safety. I think this matter is mostly caused by the children under the senior who want to get some credit and spread the rumors." Yu Huayan couldn't stand Lin Yang's arrogant face for a long time, and choked angrily. "We have seen the blight disease with our own eyes. It is also true that a white mouse fell into the condensate sent by your factory and its whole body withered immediately. When human life is at stake, there is no need to take credit for it." Lin Yang sneered. "It's sheer nonsense. The condensate is non-toxic and non-polluting, so how could it poison the mice or cause the whole body to wither? How could your research institute make up such nonsense?" Lin Yang's disdainful attitude made Yu Huayan so angry that she quickly turned her head to look at Yu Wenshan. Yu Wenshan then took a step forward, looked at Lin Yang with a rare serious look and said, "Master Xiao Lin, this blight has affected at least 3 cities. If the source cannot be identified as soon as possible, I am afraid it will have a more serious impact. Even Lin Sheng Group will not be able to shoulder this responsibility by then." Lin Yang raised his gold-rimmed glasses on the bridge of his nose and stared at Yu Wenshan in front of him through the cold glow lenses. He quickly considered various pros and cons in his mind, including the consequences of offending the Research Association. After thinking for a moment, he stepped aside and signaled the security guards to let a few people into the factory. Okay, since you want to see it, just go in and see it. But let me make it clear first. Our cooperation is based on the business reputation of our large company. If you dare to make baseless remarks outside in the future, don't think that Linsheng Medical is easy to bully. After receiving Lin Yang's instructions, the factory director quickly nodded to him respectfully. Then he trotted to the front and led everyone towards one of the factories. I have to say that the equipment of Chenggalin Pharmaceutical Factory is indeed very advanced. The entire production room is full of mechanized equipment, with almost no workers. Look, this is our production room. The entire process is automated and there is no manual intervention. Lin Yang pointed to the hundreds of barrels of finished medicines densely packed beside him and said lazily. Here, these are the refrigerants. Check them. If there are any that are unqualified, we will cooperate with the inspection. However, I still want to remind you that once the condensate is unpacked, it can only be returned to the factory to be remade. The cost of returning to the factory is several million. I can help you bear the cost of 1 barrel, but only 1 barrel. If there is no problem in opening it, why not just come here today? I will be a host tonight, and I will treat you to a meal, potluck. Yu Wenshan and the others couldn't understand the meaning of Lin Yang's words. What he was saying was that there was no way to unpack and inspect them one by one. Since you said there is a problem, please pinpoint the problematic bucket among hundreds of buckets. Otherwise, just take a break as soon as possible. Yu Huayan suddenly looked angry. The third pharmaceutical factory in Zhonglin City can be inspected one by one. Why can't Chenggalin Pharmaceutical Factory be inspected? Although Lin Yang said he was cooperating, he actually made it clear that he was secretly stumbling upon them and was unwilling to cooperate with the inspection. Several inspectors all looked embarrassed. They are just ordinary people. How could they accurately find the problematic medicine barrel from hundreds of barrels of condensate? Lin Yang looked at everyone in the seminar with a cold face and kept urging. Since you said there is a problem, then find out the problematic refrigerant and show it to me. I'm very busy in the afternoon, don't waste my time. Yu Wenshan and Yu Huayan didn't know what to do for a while. Yu Huayan looked at Lu Sheng for help. You were the one who found it when we were in Zhonglin City. Can you still find it among these now? Lu Sheng was actually looking for problematic condensate the moment he entered the factory. But the strange thing is that this time he scanned all the medicine barrels and did not see the title he was expecting. A barrel of contaminated condensate. How is this going? Lu Sheng couldn't figure out the reason for this for a while, so he had to shake his head. There's nothing wrong with the refrigerant here. Lin Yang was stunned for a moment, then laughed proudly. Okay, old man, your people say there's no problem, so I don't think there's any need to check. I would like to advise some of you, before you want to investigate other companies in the future, you'd better do your homework first. Not all companies are like us and can cooperate so actively. Yu Huayan's lungs were about to explode with anger, but there was nothing he could do. Yu Wenshan couldn't help but retreat in his heart. How about delaying it for another day, waiting for the Public Security Bureau to get a search warrant, and then investigate the Chenggalin Pharmaceutical Factory? Lin Yang was already preparing to see off the guests. At this moment, Lu Sheng suddenly asked, where are the batches of refrigerants that were previously sent to Zhonglin City's number 3 pharmaceutical factory? Lin Yang glanced at Lu Sheng impatiently and nodded to the factory director. Go check it out. The factory director responded, hurriedly ran out the door and made a phone call. 10 minutes later he hurried back. Little boss, we just asked someone to check. That batch of refrigerant has been sent to more than a dozen pharmaceutical factories. We currently have no inventory here. Lu Sheng then quickly said, maybe there's just something wrong with this batch of condensate and we need to know where it went. Yu Huayan nodded repeatedly, turned to look at the factory director, and said anxiously, Director, please give me the list of these factories. I will notify the Public Security Department and ask them to quickly recover this batch of refrigerant. The factory director glanced at Lin Yang hesitantly and saw Lin Yang sneered and shook his head. Little girl, are you mistaken? These are our business secrets. Are you from the Research Association or are you sent by our competitor? Besides, recalling pharmaceuticals for no reason will have a huge impact on the reputation of our factory. Who will compensate for this loss? Yu Huaiyan didn't expect that in Lin Yang's heart. He didn't seem to care about matters involving human life. Couldn't help but said angrily. There are already 30 or 40 people lying in the emergency room of the hospital whose life or death is unknown. You actually only consider your own interests. Lin Yang calmly lifted his glasses again. You can't slap this hat on randomly. If you find the evidence, of course I will stop it immediately. But I can't let you talk nonsense, otherwise I will still be able to do this business. Besides, human life is not that valuable in this world. The Mander Game Project team kills more people every week than the blight you mentioned. Yu Huaiyan was speechless for a moment, not knowing how to refute. Yu Wenshan snorted, turned around and left. Lin Yang waved his hand behind him. You guys are leaving slowly without seeing me off. However, at this moment, Lu Sheng's abrupt voice sounded again. I can find evidence for you. Yu Huaiyan, Yu Wenshan and others all looked at Lu Sheng in surprise. Lin Yang's eyelids twitched and he said angrily. You just said it was okay, and now you say you want to find evidence for me. Do you think this is a children's paradise? Just do whatever you want. Lu Sheng glanced at the title that just appeared on the head of the factory director. A factory director who is anxious to check raw materials. He nodded with great certainty. It just occurred to me that although the batch of condensate has been sent out, whether there are any remaining raw materials, I want to check that batch of raw materials. Lin Yang waved his hand impatiently. The condensate has been sent out, and the raw materials have naturally been disposed of long ago. There is nothing left. Lu Sheng ignored Lin Yang, but looked directly into the factory director's eyes and asked calmly. Is there any excess wild pine needle extract in warehouse No. 4? The factory director was startled. He didn't understand how Lu Sheng knew what he was thinking just now. He stammered and asked. How do you know there are excess raw materials in warehouse No. 4? Of course Lu Sheng couldn't tell him that he knew it from the title details above his head, so he just asked. You just have to answer me yes or no. Under Lu Sheng's gaze, the factory director couldn't help feeling guilty. There is still a small balance of half a barrel. According to the factory's regulations, it cannot be mixed with other refrigerants for use, so it is piled in the warehouse. Lin Yang glanced at the factory director dissatisfied, but at this time he had no other choice but to snort coldly. Then go and have a look. The factory director looked like a child who had done something wrong. He led everyone to warehouse number 4 dejectedly. Pointing to a plastic bucket in the corner, he said. This is one of the raw materials for the condensing agent, wild pine needle extract. Lu Sheng looked at the extraction solution with a knowing smile on his face. Because he finally saw the title he had been waiting for. A contaminated raw material barrel. Lu Sheng pointed at the barrel of remaining material and looked at the inspector of the research association. You can do a biopsy on this barrel of extraction fluid. Lin Yang looked at the inspector and kept mumbling. There's nothing wrong with the finished product, so what's wrong with the raw materials? Yu Huaiyan immediately choked and said. Since Mr. Shaolin is so confident in his own raw materials, why not put your hand in and try it yourself? Lin Yang's eyelids twitched again, but he didn't give in at all. Just give it a try. I have 100% confidence in the raw materials from our factory. As he said that, he walked forward and dipped his hand into the bucket. The factory director on the side was so frightened that his face turned pale. Little boss, don't be careless. Lin Yang roared at him. Shut up. There will never be any problems with the things in our factory. Lu Sheng saw Lin Yang's fingers were about to touch the extraction solution, and couldn't help but admire. This young master is arrogant, and he is very courageous. But at this moment, Lin Yang suddenly withdrew his hand. Forget it, Lao He, just follow their request and get a guinea pig. The factory director breathed a sigh of relief and waved to the testing staff to come forward with the mice. Yu Huaiyan felt a little regretful for no reason. Lu Sheng was secretly amused. Sure enough, he still gave this arrogant young man a high look. No matter how tough they say, some people are just pretending, and they don't know how soft they are in their hearts. After a while, a lively white mouse was thrown into the plastic bucket. The white mouse flopped in the bucket for a while, and suddenly its whole body turned black and its muscles atrophied rapidly. It looked like he was suffering from the blight disease. Lin Yong and the factory director, who originally wanted to see the jokes of Lu Sheng and others, suddenly withered like flowers. Especially Lin Yong felt an uncontrollable fear in his heart. If I had really managed to put my hand in just now, I would be the one who is sick now. The moment he saw the white mouse's whole body withered, Yu Huaiyan suddenly felt confident. Mr. Xiao Lin, didn't you say that there is absolutely no problem with the raw materials in your factory? How to explain this? Lin Yong did not respond to Yu Huaiyan's question at all. He turned to the factory director and cursed. MLGB, check it out quickly. Which beast dares to send poisonous raw materials to our factory and wants to frame us? Find out who it is and I'll kill him. Lin Yong stopped mentioning Heiko that he had boasted about before. He turned around and said that someone was trying to frame them, without the slightest hint of guilt. The factory director was so frightened that he was sweating profusely. He didn't dare to delay at all and ran out in a hurry. Lin Yong gave him 5 minutes, and the factory director ran back in only 3 minutes. The source of these barrels of wild pine needle extract has been found out. It came from Chen and his son. Yu Wenshan asked hurriedly, where are Chen and his son? In a city by the East China Sea, not far from Shengjing City. Lin Yong, together with Yu Wenshan and the others, rushed to the suburbs east of Shengjing City at lightning speed. There are a large number of family workshops producing primary raw materials for medical supplies. Every household has its own hilltop where a large number of medicinal plants are planted. Farmers here regularly pick plants every year, press them into primary raw materials using household presses, and then send them to major pharmaceutical factories. Among them, Changolin Pharmaceutical Factory is the largest acquirer. The family workshop of Chen and his son is far away from the suburbs and is a small Western-style building facing the seaside. Behind them is the hilltop covered by the father and son, which is covered with large tracts of green pines. Lin Yang's motorcade stopped in front of the small foreign-style building owned by Chen and his son. The courtyard door was locked and there was no movement in the courtyard. It's strange. At this time, shouldn't we be working overtime to produce raw materials? Why is it so quiet? The factory director muttered, then shouted into the small foreign building. Old Chen, Xiao Chen, are you at home? Master Xiao Lin is here, please come and open the door. The factory manager kept shouting for almost a minute, but no one came out to open the door. He had no choice but to turn around and say to Lin Yong and others. I'm afraid he's out. Lin Yong glared at the iron gate. If they dare to sell me the poisonous pine needle extract, I will skin them sooner or later. As he spoke, he took his chin and pointed toward the courtyard door. Break the lock for me. 2 strong bodyguards immediately stepped forward and slammed against the door with all their strength. There was only a loud bang sound, and the iron courtyard door was knocked out. However, what they saw next shocked Lin Yong and others. I saw 2 people covered in darkness lying in the yard in front of the small foreign-style building. My skin was dry and seemed to have been dead for a few days. The first moment the factory director saw the 2 people, he instinctively screamed. It's Lao Chen and Xiao Chen. Lin Yong still looked indifferent, covering his nose and mouth with a handkerchief. Notify the public relations department and make some emergency plans. Yu Huaiyan quickly dialed the phone number of the Public Security Bureau and shouted to the factory director. Hurry up and send me the list of those pharmaceutical factories, and I'll ask the Public Security Department to recover that batch of condensate as soon as possible. Yu Wenshan looked at the withered corpse in front of him and stamped his feet in the yard regretfully. It's still a step too late, the clue is broken. Officers from the Public Security Department quickly arrived at the scene to collect on-site information, which lasted until the evening. Yu Huaiyan came behind Lu Sheng and patted him on the shoulder. The Public Security Bureau has finished collecting the information. It will probably take a few days before the results are available. I will tell you if there are new findings later. Lu Sheng nodded gratefully, and Yu Huaiyan said again. We don't have anything to do here now. I'll take you to Shengjing City for a walk and treat you to dinner. Lu Sheng originally wanted to go home early, but he had never seen what the business district of the world's most prosperous city looked like, and he was somewhat curious. So she agreed and followed Yu Huaiyan into her car. The 2 were about to leave when their car was suddenly stopped by Lin Yong. He knocked on Yu Huaiyan's car window, put on his glasses, and said calmly. Thank you for your hard work today. I'll treat you to dinner. Yu Huaiyan rolled his eyes at Lin Yang. No need, we won't go out and talk nonsense before the investigation results come out, you can rest assured. But Lin Yang still opened the car door and squeezed in with a confident look. No woman can refuse dinner with me, let's go. Seeing that Lin Yang was clinging to the car and refusing to leave, Yu Huaiyan had no choice but to sigh. Okay, then where are we going? Skyscraper shopping mall in Shangjing City. Shangjing City is brightly lit at night. Although the level of prosperity is not as high as that of the future city Sky City, the excitement is not reduced at all. In the core business district centered on the skyscraper shopping mall, there will be a modern and luxurious large-scale commercial complex every 100 or 200 meters. It was full of people and lively. Lu Sheng and the other three arrived at the gate of the skyscraper shopping mall, and found that many people were queuing in front of the mall, waiting to be checked for points. Lin Yang and Yu Huaiyan walked into the mall very calmly. Lu Sheng stopped awkwardly. Yu Huaiyan turned his head curiously and asked, "What's wrong?" Lu Sheng said helplessly, "I'm afraid I don't have enough points." Lin Yang immediately showed an incredible look of disdain. Is there anyone who has so few points that they can't even enter the mall? His exclamation immediately caused the well-dressed fashionable men and women around him to turn their heads and look over. No matter how thick Lu Sheng's face was, it suddenly turned red. It was Yu Huaiyan who came to the rescue for him. You can get in with 1,000 points. Your points are more than enough. Lu Sheng finally breathed a sigh of relief and thought. Before he traveled through time, he was a young CEO surrounded by everyone. He never expected that one day he would become so embarrassed because he was worried about not being able to enter the mall. Lin Yang treated the two of them to a meal at a high-end Western restaurant located on the top floor of a skyscraper shopping mall. They have a very complicated dining etiquette. But this is nothing unusual for Lu Sheng. With muscle memory, you can perform very well. This surprised Lin Yang, who had originally planned to see Lu Sheng's bumpkin joke. He was obviously afraid of not being able to get in through the mall gate, but every move he made at this moment was elegant and skillful, as if it was engraved in his bones. Are you pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger? Or the fugitive young master of some wealthy family? However, Lin Yang has never been interested in men, and he only thinks about ways to talk to Yu Huaiyan. At the same time, on a double table between the two tables, Ji Yu Xiaoxiao was eating black truffle cuttlefish while looking at Yang Yuyan with big watery eyes. "Xiaoyan, I finally took you out to relax, but why do you look so worried?" Yang Yuyan herself didn't know why. Ever since she came out of the dungeon, she would always think of that man in her mind. This feeling can't be called liking, but there is an inexplicable good feeling. Ji Yu Xiaoxiao saw that Yang Yuyan didn't speak, so he said to himself, "Then tell me about your experience in the dungeon. After all, I haven't played it yet, so you can tell me your experience in advance." Yang Yuyan then took a sip of lime mint ice. This dungeon is an 8-person dungeon. It is divided into 2 camps, good guys and undercovers. The good guys are tasked with assassinating Sun Qixin, while the undercovers are tasked with secretly protecting Sun Qixin. As soon as Yang Yuyan talked about the things in the copy, she started to talk a lot. They chatted for about 10 minutes, and were finally interrupted by Ji Yu Xiaoxiao impatiently. "So you are an undercover agent. And you successfully passed the level with another undercover agent?" Yang Yuyan nodded slightly. "Actually, I almost died in the end of this dungeon. Thanks to my other companion, I survived." Ji Yu Xiaoxiao covered his heart with his hands, a look of fear on his face. "Xiaoyan, this is too dangerous. No matter what you say in the future, I will never let you download the dungeon alone again." Yang Yuyan nodded obediently, and Ji Yu Xiaoxiao tilted her head and said thoughtfully, "However, I have never heard you praise a boy for being awesome. But this time, you have praised this undercover companion so many times that I am a little curious about what he looks like." Yang Yuyan was surprised. "Have I praised him many times?" Ji Yu Xiaoxiao looked into Yang Yuyan's eyes and nodded seriously. "A lot of times." At this time, she suddenly saw Lin Yang across the 2 tables. Suddenly he frowned and whispered to Yang Yuyan, "Hey, I saw your fiancé Lin Yang." Yang Yuyan also frowned. "He came here to eat too." Ji Yu Xiaoxiao nodded. "Not only did I come to eat, but I also had a great time chatting with a beautiful girl." It's really not a good thing. Ji Yu Xiaoxiao glanced around Lin Yang's table casually. Suddenly, she seemed to see something extraordinary. I was so shocked that I dropped the cuttlefish in my mouth. Xiaoyan, you may not believe it, but your fiancé is having dinner with your husband. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.